huge adoption and a huge, number of active users in such a short period of time is staggering.
And you said it, Goran, before, and I saw some numbers. So this is how many years it took until Facebook was 10 million users. This is how many years it took for this to be 10 million users. And it was like months or years and months. And then ChatGPT was days.
Days to, I think, 5 million active users or something.
And then
insane.
And then exponentially from there. But you asked the question before, but I flip it back to you. What have you tried ChatGPT in any? What's your personal experience with it? What have you done?
I mean, of course, I've tried it a number of times, but I think.
What have you asked it?
Yes, actually, for the DARE Awards, I tried to make it give a good motivation for why a certain person should get the award. But I think some other examples are even more strong. I had a colleague that he thought, okay, it should be able to produce some code as well. So he tried it out. Okay, I'm going to use it for a real use case I have right now. So he said, okay, I want to build this kind of Python backend with some front end to it. So this is the functionality I want to have. And he just wrote that in natural language, and it produced, some example code. He just, cut and paste into some IDE or development environment, and he tried it out. He ran it, and it worked partly, but not always. So for some input, it failed and crashed. So then, in the reply to that suggestion, he said, it crashes for this input. Can you fix it? And then it basically said, okay, here is a fixed version of the previous code. And he tried it out, and now it worked. And I go, okay, cool. But now I want to have a progress bar in the bottom of this kind of front end that I am developing. Can you please add it? And then, okay, here's the third version. And then it ran it, and it had the functionality he wanted, and with the progress bar in the bottom. It's like in 10 seconds.
And now, so we are really talking about software programming 2.0, 3.0.
3.0, I would say.
Because I remember we were talking about this maybe last season or the season before, or I've been using Embark Studios as a way to exemplify AI in gaming and how it revolutionizes the way we code. And we talked about how we can now we can tell the computer what code we need, and then the computer does it. And the crazy thing is now a very media hyped, very in deep, heavy, but lightweight in other ways approach like ChatGPT is doing it. Yeah. It is mind blowing.
It is, and I remember my girlfriend's daughter. She had some kind of exercise in some kind of marketing management course. She asked me a question about what's the difference between, in Swedish now this is like affärsstrategi and strategic management.
So business strategy and strategic management.
Yeah, I guess
something like that.
Something like that. And I couldn't really differentiate the two. I had no great answer, but then I posted the question, of course, to ChatGPT, and he came up with the perfect answer, saying, the business strategy is about trying to build up a business plan and how that can maximize your revenue that you have. But the strategy management is really to putting that plan into action and how to really make that process work properly. Perfect answer. And then I told her, just continue using that for whatever kind of exercise you get in the course. And she had, okay. And she has used it to an extreme extent right now. And for her, it's great, but I'm questioning if that's really education.
And I have the similar experience sitting down. I think it's like 1 week ago, 2 weeks ago, watching the World Cup. And my son is studying for some sort of diagnosis, or he has a hand in of some kind. And I used to be in the energy industry. So he wanted, Daddy, you need to help me finding some good references and some good, what I can quote here on energy and different energy sources. And I'm like, oh, dude, this is 3 years ago. Maybe I can wing something, but he didn't feel reassured from me. But then he came down when we were watching the football, and it's like, Dad, why do I really need to study? Look what I did. I used this generative AI and I asked a question, and I got this answer down. Can you make this answer better? Do you know it better than this? Of course not. No. So it puts some interesting dimensions on how education need to renovate what's their purpose, I guess.
They have to really adapt, I guess, quickly. But for me, actually, this is a bit of a frustration as well, because the popularity that ChatGPT especially has received in media and in the mainstream non-technical kind of community is extreme. But in reality, if you look at more technical or research-oriented topics, I mean, the functionality of it is not that different, but the ease of use that it has and the user experience it has and that is available for free for anyone, even if you're not technical and you don't know how to use an API and you don't need to know, or you don't know how to use an open source framework and get that working in a notebook, blah, blah, blah. This has made it significantly different. And that's what you said, before. What was the numbers you said before in terms of adoption?
I can't remember the exact numbers, but it was ridiculous exponentiality, how the numbers grew in Facebook, how the numbers grew in Netflix, and there was a couple of more examples, and then on the end, ChatGPT, and just so much faster. So much faster.
I mean, I think, Facebook, before they reached like 5 million active users or something, it took at least a number of months or something. And a lot of other technical giants, no one is even close to having that quick user adoption as ChatGPT has had.
The closest we can see probably to ChatGPT would be DALL-E or something like what we are seeing right now this year in uptake of new technology by the mainstream is something different. But
even DALL-E don't have the same user interface that this one has. So it was very much
it's
stronger.
even simpler, right?
I mean, the technology is actually very, rather similar, but it didn't have the user experience. It didn't have the user interface that ChatGPT has. So it didn't have anything close to the adoption. That
DALL-E has over 1.5 million, and this is 4 days ago, 1.5 million users creating 2 million images every day. While ChatGPT, in the first 5 days in November, it had 1 million users. So in the first 4 days, 5 days.
I can relate back to this exact topic maybe 5 years ago, and the court discussion about scarcity and abundance. And then the argument was we have an abundance of data, but we have a scarcity of insights or usefulness of all this data. And I then used that, and I think it was in Data Innovation Summit 18, 16, 17, where I took the example of, when was the internet conceived?
It was in the 70s, but it really didn't become popular until the mid-90s.
And this is the core topic, right? So the internet was conceived in the 70s, and you have the DARPA and whatever you call it, like how it started in universities and in military.
IP protocol.
And all this. So the technology thinking was there, but the revolutionizing moment in time is the web browser.
The disruption didn't happen.
The real disruption happens when you go from scarcity to abundance, and scarcity to abundance happens with the web browser, which is all about simplicity.
Yeah, or user reach in some way.
Or user reach, or making something work for anyone.
For me, though, it's kind of a big frustration because it's really overshadows so many other AI useful examples. And especially it puts the expectation that kind of any system you use that you are trying to truly productionize in some kind of organization now should have the same functionality and quality that ChatGPT has, and that's not possible.
No, and of course.
I have a question to you. So why do you think that people are actually adopting ChatGPT more than the rest of the technologies out there?
It's a user interface, I think, and user experience. Right?
All right,
and quality, of course.
It's so intuitive. It's so stupidly simple, and you get exactly what you need. You understand what it's there for. You really understand how to use it. You prompt it, and then it actually answers you.
And you can have a normal dialogue discussion with it, which you couldn't really have before.
Right, but it also provides you immediate value.
Yeah, it's fast.
Yeah, immediate value. One of the things that people actually mostly appreciate about tools, products, and technologies is immediate value. I mean, you cannot take that away, and you can just look at it. You can utilize it for so many things.
But
The interface is not that.
No,
big. You still need to log in.
actually-
You still need to do this and that, and etc.
But it's basically a search interface or a query interface that anyone can use. You don't need to have any kind of experience in how to build an API or how to download a model.
I don't think that most of the people actually even understand that there is an AI behind it.
True.
But
Right? And this is my point. So we are arguing that AI in general scares people off, right? How robots and etc.
Or technology in general, but yeah.
Yeah, but only until that point when this technology actually makes sense and it contributes to their increase, let's say, better way of living, or basically make something very, very fast and very convenient for them. At that point of time, they don't care. Do you care if a medical appliance in the hospital is done by AI or is working with the AI system behind? If you know that this machine is a difference between you living and dying, you would not even think about it, right?
Yeah.
there's actually another really good example, which is not AI, but to exemplify the point you're making. Swish had its 10-year anniversary just the other day. So Swish is an app conceived by several Swedish large banks as a way to handle money transfer between individuals. And it's I think it's probably one of the most loved apps in the Swedish region, in Sweden. And it's probably one of the most used apps. And the value is immense. And it has completely embedded itself in our daily lives. What does it
Without
do?
any fees as well, which is amazing.
And they kept it super clean, super simple. And I can imagine the conversations they had. Oh, we could add this feature, we could add this feature, we could add this feature. They didn't. They kept it super simple, intuitive, and just smooth operation when I want to transfer money. And it took over how we pay in our clubs, in our sports. You know, anything where you want to transfer money, Swish is probably the easiest way. And that, to the point, the simplicity, the intuitiveness of use. And then
Value.
technology is not a problem anymore. Value.
And then-
We understand the value. We want to do something. We understand the problem, and we simply need to use it, and we don't need to read. There's no RFM problem.
And I have another one. So usually when you evaluate a startup, like, oh, this is going to be a unicorn or not? One of the key ingredients is that, is this application platform going to become a quick habit for people? Right? Quick habit. So now if you have started actually, let's say, using ChatGPT in phrasing your articles or whatever it's going to be, right? Imagine the feeling now when you're starting writing on your own again. Or if you know that there is a quicker way for you to code, that is the habit. Immediately catches. And then from that on is gone.
It's very addictive for sure. And
Yes.
you know, when they put the paywall on it, which will happen very soon, a lot of people is getting very, very frustrated and will start paying for it.
I would pay for it, no problem.
But okay, so
But
the
I'm
real
paying for Mid-Journey. Why should I not?
But let's talk a little bit about the problems with ChatGPT. You were hinting in this direction of the conversation, because we have a massive foundational model here, and we can now interact with it with the prompt. But in order to use that, okay, and we can find many uses like this when we are sort of using it in our creative process or something like this. But typically when we want to put AI in production in a commercialized system, we need to tweak it to the domain or the purpose we have. We need to do many things, and we need to be able to interact with it, not only with the prompt, but actually embedding the AI in another system, as an example. Could we elaborate on this? You know, what's the challenge here?
It's similar to the normal GPT, the original GPT kind of discussions, you know, what are the values for that and the potential problems with having a system like that. Now, of course, no company can fine-tune ChatGPT today. It's in the complete proprietary state of OpenAI, and no one even have access to the model, nor the data that they have trained it on properly. So then the question becomes, okay, if someone wants to use it for their own purposes and since it only have access to data on, I think, 2021 and before, of course, a lot of data will not be available to it. And if you want to use it for various type of tasks, you need to be able to tune it for your specific needs. Now, that's not possible for like 99% of all the companies. They're not going to do that. They're not going to have the resources to do it. But then you get like tricked into it, and you have this kind of high expectation of this is really what's possible to do with AI today, but it's not going to be possible for the use case that whatever company
but it becomes a direct-to-consumer approach right now for us as individuals to use it in our individual workflow, whatever we are doing, right? We're going to write a speech for the DARE Awards. We can use it to experiment on this speech. We can use it for, as one person said, he did it and then he pasted. So it's very hard for companies to embed this and start using it versus we are as individuals can benefit, can be addicted to it.
And there are so many traditional use cases of AI that doesn't work with ChatGPT. I mean, you're not going to use it to identify a brain tumor. You're not going to use it to build a music recommender system. You're not going to use it for having some kind of semantic search in your own databases.
Many other types of problems that AI solves beautifully that it's not really in the mainstream.
And it's not generative AI at all. No. I mean, but now generative AI has received so much attention, especially through the popularized media articles that's been out there, that these type of other normal use cases of AI that usually are the big value providers,
the real value providers in companies,
that they are being overshadowed. And also that they also are receiving this expectation that, this is possible to do with ChatGPT. Why is my crappy AI system that I previously deployed last year so horribly and can't have this kind of easy to use interface? That's a big problem. So
Is it?
Yeah, is it a problem?
Is it a problem?
Yeah.
But what is the problem then? I flip it. What is the problem? Is maybe that we are getting crazy expectations that is really hard to manage. Yeah. We're getting less funding on maybe very useful stuff because it goes into hype stuff.
But it's also like if you take company X, let's say a medical company or some banking company or whatever, and now they say, okay, we want to start using AI. Could you find a good use case to start with? And they say, customer service, I don't know, or let's find some fraudulent transaction in some banking application. I don't know. Then they say, okay, well, I tried out this ChatGPT thing. I just asked it some stuff and it received this kind of awesome reply. But when I try out your thing, for one, I have to put in a horrible kind of data set in some kind of CSV format, and it was really hard to use. I didn't understand the output. The visualization was crappy. I couldn't even see the text. It didn't explain it to me in a natural language, so I don't even understand the output. There was no transparency or motivation for, it's going to be so much problem for traditional kind of AI use cases, I think,
but
going forward.
What? I want to flip that. Maybe when you have something that is used I think this is a trend. Right? If you go back 50 years, the B2B space was leading innovation. Now, the systems we have, which are old shitty systems in our companies, are shit compared to the user experiences we're used to with Facebook, with whatever apps we're using. So maybe this also put the light on the finger of usability and adoption and get your fucking shit together.
But everyone doesn't have the resources of OpenAI. They can't have like $1 billion to...
Maybe that's the problem why we don't have the uptake, that we are not spending time on adoption and usability enough.
Yes.
It's a classic problem, right? You have an IT project and you spend all the stuff on back-end tech and nothing on change management, adoption, and UX.
But adoption is one thing. The other problem is no one can have the resources that OpenAI and Facebook and Google have. So from a pure technical point of view,
to live up to those standards.
Speaking about change management, just thinking, how can anyone come close to the technical the advancement that they have? There is no way. And if they don't even make it open, even they called OpenAI, or if they don't have billions of dollars to do the training and data collection and the fine tuning and whatnot,
So we're
It's
getting
going to be tough.
expectations from some tech giants that are so vastly more funded and competent.
The AI divide is growing.
Yes, but I think you're distancing away from the pinpoint of this, and that is the usability factor.
Yeah.
So you don't have to have billions to create a usable platform.
No?
Right, but in most of the cases with the AI systems, as Henrik is rightfully pointing out, they are actually just built technically. So look at it, what it does. Like when I had like a friend over explaining me what the great system they have done, and I said like it's overpowering all the systems out there. Look at it, pow, and it comes a code and just runs the code. So like you see that number? It was 4 times faster. Yeah, but I didn't see anything because I don't understand anything what happened, right? For him, it was very exciting, but I said like, yeah, but how I can use it?
Yeah, but I think that's the gap that people don't understand, how advanced really ChatGPT is. That it can produce an output that really describes things in natural language, which looks, like a very simple thing.
Yes.
But it isn't. It's a super, super advanced thing.
Yes, but we're talking about usability, right?
Yeah, but usability is one thing, and an interface is one thing, but to be able to produce and understand also the input of natural language is very, 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 very hard. And very few companies have access to doing that. So if you then assume that anyone else, don't think about the actual interface in terms of, it's a simple query box with some text. Think about being able to understand what you mean from a semantical point of view and having reasoning capabilities that ChatGPT has. That is not something that 99% of the companies will have access to.
But I think there is a middle ground here. Because in one way, I actually concur with both you, Goran, and you, Anders. Because in one way, of course, to mimic or copy or try to do whatever OpenAI is doing is, of course, impossible for the normal people. But to have a vigilant understanding for the usefulness, for the UX, for the problem at hand, to solve that, I take it sometimes we don't even need super advanced AI. We need the right data at the right time in the right format at the right place in the right context for someone to act upon it. And if you can do that really, 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 really well, you have a useful system.
I still think, the level of advancement that you have when you have these kind of hundreds of billions of parameters in it is very advanced. And that is something that is very hard to copy. I would say, I would love that people instead cherished the amazement that the clip model had when that was released earlier this year. The clip model is used in DALL-E, for example, and in other OpenAI models, and used in Stable Diffusion and so many other things.
What is clip? Use the short version.
So clip is basically taking a multimodal kind of input, so both text and images, and then forcing the description of that, the embedding a vector of numbers that describes the meaning, the semantic of both the text, like a sentence saying, here is a person with a dog and a cape. And then you have a picture with a person and a dog and a cape. And then that kind of description, the semantics of that, summarized in 512 numbers, should be the same. That is what Clip is doing to an extreme that hasn't been seen before. And it's one of the most powerful open source. It's actually an open part of OpenAI, which I love. That I wish people cherish that much more.
But it has no opportunity to go mainstream because there is no way to interact with it if you're not a techie yourself.
Well, a lot of companies can use it. But
you need to be an engineer. This is an engineering product you're talking about.
Yes, it is. But this is something that you can truly take as a company that do have some engineering skills and some data science skills, then put it to real use for your use cases. You can use it for your own data. You can put some other model on top of it, and you can find a true useful use case that have value for your company with Clip model in such a bigger extent than you could to ChatGPT.
But this angle puts another light on what is the problem with ChatGPT.
I think the problem.
Let me state my hypothesis, and then you can respond. ChatGPT, which is mainstream, means we have all been exposed to it, and we have some sort of relation to it. We were referring to my son or whatever. So it means the CEOs of the companies sees this, and they go back and slam the table like Goran doesn't like me to do, and then say, "I want my ChatGPT." And he asked the engineering company to try to do something that it has no use, has no real business implication for this company. When if the engineers that truly understood, that hopefully then understood problems that they could solve that is useful, should put all their money in clip and do something very, very useful with this, as an example, that this money is not so well spent because we got carried away in the media hype, in the hype train, rather than understanding technology and the parts of AI that is relevant to our business.
I mean,
is that a fair?
It is. It's a good way to describe it. I would describe it like, of course, media is jumping on this train because it has a mainstream adoption that is in extreme. The problem then is that potentially companies will come to the conclusion that, okay, we need to use GPT, we need to use ChatGPT, we need to use these kind of large language models for whatever task that we have, and then think that that's the best way to go forward.
That's the smartest path for them, which is probably
they think.
not.
And
because that's what they know, that's what they heard.
And that's what media is writing about. And I think that's a very, very dangerous path going forward. And I wish that you had a more objective view of what is the proper way for company X, like an SME of some normal size, that wants to get started with AI? What should they do? Well, then they look at media and they speak to some kind of journalist or some kind of non-engineering person that has been playing around with DALL-E and Stable Diffusion and Midjourney and whatnot. And they say, of course, you should use this. And you could find some new use cases potentially, but they will potentially miss out on the extreme benefits that you can have
the hardcore basic stuff.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that I think is a big danger.
This is the real problem, right? That the hype train puts instead of saying, everybody needs to do AI, it's like, everybody needs to do ChatGPT. What is our ChatGPT use cases? And you put all your attention on that rather than really understanding your business problem.
I think one
moving backwards to technology that solves your business problem.
I think you compare this to what happened before deep learning, and you have a lot of these kind of traditional machine learning tasks which are still useful today. If you have tabular data that you want to use, you shouldn't go even deep learning for most use cases, and you can put stuff in production that is really, really useful without even having any semantics in it. It's just finding patterns in data in a way that humans cannot, but still works really well, super efficient, and that is really the best way for some use cases to use AI. And then, deep learning came, and it completely in the last 10 years have revolutionized.
So the point was almost like forgetting the use case as long as we're using deep learning. So we are over-engineering stuff.
Yes, you use a sledgehammer for killing an ant, and that's not a bad thing. And the same thing is happening now, I would say. So when you can see, of course, deep learning has been, open up so many new use cases that you couldn't use traditional machine learning for. So with traditional machine learning, you couldn't even, properly work with text, images, and audio, like unstructured data in a good way. But you can now. Now with generative AI, that's opening up another set of new possibilities that hasn't been possible before. And then once again, you're saying, you're just using deep learning, not really generative AI. It's not the cool stuff anymore. And not speaking, traditional machine learning. It's not even deep learning, and it's certainly not generative. That's so like 10 years ago. But it's not. For some use cases, you should use the proper tool for the task, so to speak.
Maybe it's just stop 1 minute. When we say generative AI, because that's before we said deep learning as the hype fashion word that no one knew the difference to traditional machine learning, and now we talk about generative AI. What do we mean with generative AI, if we want to simplify it?
Yeah, and of course it's been around for a very, very long time, and normal recurrent neural networks could generate text even and songs and MIDI symbols, since the 80s, and it's been around for a long time, the type of generative AI. But basically, when you have something that is not doing traditional classification or regression tasks, but actually generating either a new symbol, some kind of time series progression, perhaps forecasting examples, or even generating letter by letter, which these traditional LSTMs and RNNs were doing for a long time. They are another type of AI use case that are generating things symbol by symbol in some way. Now, what's happened in just the recent 1 year or a couple of years, I guess 2 or 3 years at least, is that you can generate not only as small symbols or numbers in some time series or letters in some sentence, but actually generate text, images, and audio to a level of quality that's never been possible before. So this is,
So we're generating an image. We're going into DALL-E. We are prompting something, and then the AI is generating a picture of that. We give them some prompts, maybe a picture of our wife, and then a scenario, and then it can generate something which is absolutely beautiful. Generative, image?
Yes. So the text to everything that I guess could be a good summary of 2022 when it comes to media hype, at least, is that you can go from text to text to images, text to music, text to code, text to audio, text to whatever.
So, but this is the segue actually to, I think,
but just to say before, there has been a lot of other generative use cases before text to things.
Yeah. But this year was text to actually.
Yes, text to everything could be something that could, even though it was available a bit before, but the real big breakthrough, just as internet, as you said before, it had a really, really big breakthrough to the mainstream, I would say, this year.
So we are texting, we are prompting, and it generates something.
A natural language interface to use something in a very, very simplistic way that has a good value, as you spoke about, in a very direct sense, right?
But when you started now to a little bit like saying that's sort of a way to encapsulate 2022, text to.
Yes, text to everything.
Text to everything. That's 3 words.
When we are there, I would like to start with that. Exactly. Give me a second. Let's see if this is going to work.
The AI podcast season covers a range of topics related to artificial intelligence, AI, and its applications in various industries. Some of the key themes discussed in the episodes include outsourcing, building trustworthy AI, programming languages, the state of AI research, venture capital funding for AI startups, using AI to solve boring problems, data science leadership, and the role of AI in the finance industry. The season features interviews with various experts and practitioners in the field of AI, including Goran Kvaerdl, Christian Gutman, Jan Bosch, Henrik Landgren, Ejil Martinsson, and Bjorn Hertzberg, among others. The episodes also explore the impact of AI on industries such as mining, telecom, and media, and discuss the importance of regulation and ethical considerations in the development and use of AI.
So
that was fun.
Yeah, that text was generated by the summary of this year's. So basically, we took what is called the timestamps of every
the agenda of every podcast.
Yes, exactly. The timestamps of each podcast episode that we had this year, and then we put that into ChatGPT, which created the summary in 3 paragraphs, which is also the best thing you can do when creating such things. And then we put this into Natural Reader, which is a free text-to-speech, what is called reader online. And there you go.
So it's a double text-to thing.
Yes.
Text-to-summary and text-to-speech.
Yes. And now we can put this into Mid-Journey or to DALL-E, and then we will see what is going to happen.
In the end, put that in DALL-E, and we get a picture of the year as well.
Exactly.
So this is the real segue to Anders. What are we doing here today?
Before that, I would like to just say that I'm a very, very big activist towards what has happened this year, because we had a lot of AI art shows.
That's right. We had
art shows in the office this year, in the club this year. And actually, I told to all of my marketeers and content that next year, minimum 10 to 15% of all the content out there needs to be AI generated, so they can start applying this technology within their work. And of course, it doesn't have to be there because of some other reasons, but it's great inspiration. because I mean, in Chat GPT, you can put the pretenses of a song, and then you can write it as well. Like, okay, I want this to sound in a, let's say, Irish or a Macedonian or whatever it is going to be, 7/8 or a 4/4 or whatever, and it creates a great song. And it doesn't have to be a great song. It's a great inspiration for you starting writing lyrics for a song. Wow. And that is the natural thing of this. It makes it everything so much easy. But then it has also challenges, because once you start using Chat GPT, and you start asking questions around the similar topic, you will start getting similar answers, which means that at some point of time, you can actually discover if this was written by Chat GPT or not, because it uses the same answers. This is because the Chat GPT is trained on the data up till 2020, and it's not allowed to actually
2021, I believe.
Yes,
But
2020 it was, because I asked it.
Okay, but I think it was wrong there. You shouldn't always trust Chat GPT.
I think he has his own mind. He does things and etc. So
Is it a he or she?
I don't know. I call it. Okay, it's a discussion. But imagine,
You should ask ChatGPT.
Yes.
Yeah. Ask it.
Let's do that. Actually, that will be fun. But while we are waiting for that,
Why are we here today, Anders?
Yeah, sorry. Okay. No, but I guess welcome everyone to, what should we call it? Christmas finale of the AI After Work podcast or something?
Perfect.
Right?
I want that
It's
t-shirt.
just a free form after work in general, just you and me, Henrik and Goran.
it's a season finale. Okay, so
Season
or
finale,
a year
yes.
finale, maybe. Right?
Yes.
It's almost a year finale.
Yes.
And we have no real plan for this podcast, I guess, but doing some retrospective or reflection on the year that's been, and perhaps doing some future outlook as well. Who knows? Or what do you think, Henrik?
I think that. I think I will attempt to frame an agenda.
Okay.
I think we should try to take out the key takeaways of the year.
Mm?
You know, did we see some themes? Did we see some ideas in business, in research, in the community, in society, from fantastic
All the awesome guests.
Awesome guests.
How many guests did we have, Goran, this year? You know, is it
Around 30 episodes. I got
35, I think it should
35?
be.
Yeah.
I can count it. So.
Yeah, and then we should do some sort of best of highlights, sort of going, you know,
Going through some highlights. Yes.
Going through what were we talking about? What were we discussing with the different guests?
So this is 35.
35.
Yes.
Is that for 2 seasons or 1 season?
This is for 2 seasons.
2 seasons in 1 year. Yeah.
From the I
Like
think
January.
January, yes.
Like from January to December. And then, as we always do in our podcast, what's next?
What's next? Yeah.
And then sort of, I think we could spin a little bit like and see if we can predict, or what do we
predict in the future? You know, what is Bill Gates has said?
Yeah,
predictions are hard.
But predicting the future is probably the hardest.
I googled that a couple of times. It's not him, it's actually.
Really?
It's the scientist Bohr who actually said that.
Who?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's not him.
It's not Bill Gates who said it originally.
Yes.
Okay, I think Bill Gates has said it at least once.
Yeah.
Many
because he
people have
read
said
it.
that,
No.
including me.
Yes, exactly. True. I wish we prepared something, but I think that's one of the.
That's how we do it. It's an after work.
It is
right?
an after work. We haven't really prepared that much, but we're speaking about what we're thinking about, and then
Yeah, what comes to mind?
what comes to mind. It's good.
So I guess how do we start this?
Yeah, should we go with your agenda? Some key
Yes.
takeaways.
Niels Bohr.
Niels Bohr.
really?
That's a good first guy to say that.
Yes.
He's worthy of the quote.
I learned something new today. That's awesome.
But
Okay, we have so many guests, etc. Do you want to start with some key takeaways, or?
okay, let me have an angle on experience from the pod, but also to some degree experience in my professional lives and what we see on LinkedIn and etc. And I would like to take a little bit like the business enterprise angle, and then you can maybe add
I love
from
the tech. So, yeah.
the research tech angle.
Yeah.
But I think this year can be summarized to some degree, and that we started to talk about productization and the importance of understanding AI in a way, and data, by the way, how we productize and make it accessible to people. And I think this is a major, major step. And I think we have been fortunate on this podcast to have had guests from Google, to have guests from Spotify, where this productization and how to think product is very natural. If I take the example, we have the engineering manager from Spotify Search,
Anders
Niemann.
Thank you.
As an example, right?
Yeah.
They have a full-on 360 product teams for many years in order to manage the fundamental product idea around search with the data scientists and engineers and the psychologists and the service design, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
And how to truly, make value from machine learning in a tech organization like Spotify as well.
Yeah,
and then taking search in a specific example.
And if I go into there has been a lot of discussion on data mesh and stuff like this. But if you dissect it down, it's really about starting treating data as a product at scale, and basically having data that is easily consumable for other teams, as an example, right?
Yeah.
And so this productization, and it goes into the conversation on algos. It goes into the conversation of, even questioning the core premise of BI. We started with BI in separate BI tools, and we're doing that for 10, 15 years. And now more and more of us think, is that the right way? Or do you want people to consume?
I mean, BI is still useful, right? I mean, you shouldn't say they shouldn't use BI, right?
This is a nuance.
Yeah.
Do we want to take the users away from their normal user life and their normal applications, or whatever makes up their world, to go into a separate BI application? Or do we want them to have BI, of course, but we want to embed it? We want to put seamlessly the insight, the AI, the analytics of the bigger product or the bigger process.
I mean, I think some people are conflating some terms here with BI and analytics, and think that is what AI is in some way, or that is what being data driven is in some way. And I think what you said before about productionizing things is actually something else potentially.
Yeah, So what I think productizing things. Doesn't matter which part of the scale you're on. If you're on sort of the descriptive reporting analytics, or you're into hardcore deep learning recommender systems, we are deeper and deeper understanding that whatever we're doing, we need to productize it in order for it to be consumable. And as we highlighted in our starting conversation, with high usability.
Yeah, so I mean, I know you spoke a lot about the analytical ladder at a number of points, and we had Luca here from Peltoran at some point, and I think phrased it really well. Of course, we should use data and AI for BI or analytical purposes, but you don't have to start with that. You don't have to first, go the full journey in having a perfectly driven, BI system in place. You can actually start to use data and AI in products or in different parts of the organization. If it's the finance part, logistic part, if it's in some kind of product development or whatever, and that can happen, in parallel, and it should potentially happen very quickly in some other areas.
Now I understand your angle.
Yeah.
And to rephrase what I said, so to sort of fit with your thinking. We can have many different use cases, and we can have operational AI use cases way up to the right, and we can have very reporting BI-oriented use cases down to the left. Irregardless of use case and what is the right method to reach it, productization is still relevant in all of them. That's what I'm trying to highlight. That whatever from BI and trying to collect a lot of data, that is one thing, right? It has nothing to do with maybe an image recognition system at the end of a production line to pick out better, less yield, right? This is something completely different. You don't need a BI system for that. You need an operational AI system with image recognition. But productization, so it's useful in the day of the operator, so to speak, of the user, of the consumer, is key. That's what I meant with productization, that it doesn't matter if we're on data, if we're on BI, or if we're on deep neural networks, if we're on recommender system, but there is a deeper understanding of productization this year.
Yeah, and perhaps we can phrase this in different ways. But one is that, of course, if we want to build a traditional like BI system, you normally need to centralize all the data from different parts of the organization, having some kind of data pipelines going, from left and right into
whatever.
So that's one thing, and of course that's useful and beneficial. Perhaps you don't need, and you feel free to disagree with me here, but perhaps in that case, if you simply want to build a report or some dashboards trying to understand how the company is doing, that's one thing, and you want to potentially productionize those, and the data pipelines and the data itself is one thing.
BI in quote brackets product, and then something else is completely different in how we want to reach that.
And some misconceptions I think that some companies are having then potentially is that you first need to go data-driven BI before you can use this in some kind of manufacturing part of some organization, and they can start doing that without having any kind of centralized like data pipelines in place. They can actually collect the data themselves, especially with the current deep learning systems that you do have, putting microphones on some kind of machine and using that to try to understand, now it's time to do some kind of predictive maintenance on this machine before it breaks down or whatnot.
So two vastly different use cases and potentially two different architectures altogether. Both of them realize this year, whatever we are doing, we need to productize it so it's easier to use and to maintain and to add more data. And so I argue
some more than others, but
I argue productization as a fundamental idea, and in a way, this is really huge because we have lived with projects. In the big enterprises, we have lived with processes, and we are not so used to think about everything like products in this way.
Yeah, and just to also, I think a misconception I've seen quite a lot is that even if you can have a data flow or data pipeline where you potentially productionize that data pipeline, saying it's actually running every day and it has some high quality and some monitoring on top of it. That is actually something different than actually building a product that you make use of that data. So to move from just or analyzing a data from a manual point of view to actually having something that is completely built into some existing product is a big step, and it requires much more investments and work and engineering than people think.
Yes, and I think you put it well here, because we can get to the point where we get our production, our insight, or analytics in production. But the real game to value is the adoption of new behaviors of our users, of our customers, to make it so seamless, so it's basically just there when they need it. And herefore, I think productization thinking is so important in order to think about, let me take an example. It's for the direct-to-consumer cases, the data platforms like Spotify, whatever, we have used AI in order, we don't care about the AI, we care about the experience of the user in the discovery list or in the search or whatever. And we make the AI experience almost hidden. It's just a natural part of what the product is.
Yes.
Now, when I move into enterprise and I say, I need some analytics in order to improve my plan to perform process in business control, all of a sudden we try to take them to some quirky analytics in Excel, or we did it in a self-service BI system. And in reality, what happens when we treat the business controller as a consumer who should basically be optimizing how we plan the company, and we do that. So it's a different ball game than, of course, than listening to music. But product thinking prevails in relation to really understanding the user experience now of a business controller and how we seamlessly embed the analytics at the fingertips of the controller as it was, in direct to consumer. So I argue when you start using the word product and you want to use the product experience, then you get to a different mindset of how you need to embed and think about the usefulness of the analytic output, so to speak, but also, well, it needs to work and it needs to be fluent, it needs to be intuitive, it needs to be
seamless. And what's new this year? What's happened this year that potentially is different from previous years?
For me, the big change is that this product thinking, I think it's been around in Spotify for years, but I saw how it crept in to large enterprise, and I saw with the advent and the discussion of data mesh that we started to move to other domains further down in the back end, so to speak. We need to understand who is our customers, and we need to productize how we can reach data. We need to productize how we can reach the algorithm. We need to productize the experience in every step of the chain. I think that productization thinking moved deeper into our enterprises.
And how would you define what productization really is?
I mean, like, if Goran like to, can you summarize it in 3 words? Summarize it in 3 words.
I think I can give my view on it otherwise.
I'll give my view and then yours.
Yeah, okay.
Productization for me, in its essence, is 3 words. It's usability, harvest, reuse. So the core dimension is that someone has high usability of whatever you're doing. So you need to think about if I have an algorithm, but it's really quirky and a lot of work to make that used in everyday life for the user of this algorithm. So usability, of course, is key. But then we have the different dimension when we do this at scale. And then we get to the topic of harvest and reuse. So if something is a product that is maybe a little bit further down the line, and you have many different use cases and you have many different users of, for instance, data. How can I productize data in such a way so I can use it over and over and over again?
For me, when I think productization, it's really the problem that so many companies don't realize, which is the difference between building a prototype and building a product. So, you can easily build a POC or a product or a prototype of whatever, saying, okay, here is some data pipeline. You can try it out, do some analyze that in some way and say, yeah, it looks good. You can put it in some dashboard, or potentially it can be useful. But to actually have something that is used in production that has the robustness, the scalability, the monitoring, that actually makes it work for a long term, that is something completely different, that is at least 10x more work than building some product. And that's a big difference to me.
But I think what we are referring to here is actually this when I say harvest and reuse, and when you say from product type to product, is the continuum of the same string. So how long is a piece of string? So imagine you starting with a prototype and you can really cheat.
Not cheat. I mean, I wouldn't say cheat.
No,
I mean, it's useful to do.
It's useful for the prototype.
Yeah, it is.
But when you put it in production, there's so much more.
The value only becomes, once you actually put something in production. But to put something in production, it shouldn't be. It should really be a failing fast kind of mentality here, which means that you should stop working with things that doesn't seem to provide value.
So the prototype is useful for failing fast.
Yes.
But when we realize we are sitting on a unicorn, so to speak, and you want to put it in production, there is so much more. Now, the next level of that, how can I scale that? And then it's another problem again. And part of scaling is harvest and reuse.
And I think that this is a big change also that's seen in some companies, that some companies are simply saying, okay, we want to become AI ready or use data in a more efficient way. Well, what do? You hire a set of data scientists, or perhaps just one data scientist. And then you say, okay, problem solved, let him work for some time, and then we have something that provides value. And I think that's very, very dangerous mindset. So what you instead should do, of course, is, yes, you can have data scientists that do build prototypes and try to evaluate potential use cases. But if you truly want to make that or put that in production, it's not sufficient to have a data scientist. You need to have the data engineers, the backend engineers, the front-end engineers, the UX designers and whatnot to actually have that as a proper product. And I wish more people really understood. And I think some actually has in this year.
But this is a segue to what is, if I may do two revelations on business in the enterprise world. You are now segueing into everybody 10 years ago or 5 years ago was hiring data scientists. And this was the
10
stuff.
years ago?
5 years. 5 years ago.
7.
7. Okay, let's say 7. But the whole journey, in Nordics, from let's take it from 2000. I mean, like I hired Mikael Klingvall as a senior data scientist in 2012.
What was his title?
Data scientist. It was.
We need to challenge this.
He joined Vattenfall as a data scientist in 2013. Yeah. And then, for sure. But this was quite early. Yeah. No, doesn't matter. Let's put when did data innovation start? 2016?
2016. So,
and we were there to define data science.
So I
remember.
So we started actually I was already in touch then with Anders and Errol and Robert, and they were already data scientists. So it might concur that is actually.
So it
10 years maybe. It's
10 years.
Try the Google Trend. Google Trend data scientist.
No, but the Google Trend will show us also the American and then.
But we were defining data scientists
Google
in a conference.
2001.
But we were defining data scientists in a conference in 2016.
But in any case, do you agree with this idea that for productization to happen, you need to move beyond having just data scientists?
No, and this was my point. Another trend that I think I saw more strongly in 2022 was more talk about data engineering, the data fundamentals.
Data ops and data evangelists.
And I think it started really in 2000. Data ops came around 2020, but the whole understanding of balance. How many data engineers do you need for one data scientist? Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that really hit home. That many organizations maybe started with too many data scientists.
That's actually a good trend, I think. 2016-ish, it started to take off a bit at least.
Yeah. And you were spot on. We were spot on when we started data innovation science. Mm. Yeah. But so with productization, when you say that, productization is not a data science problem. It's a software engineering. It's a data engineering problem, and they coincide.
It's an engineering problem for sure. Yes,
they coincide, right? And now we can talk about AI engineering, and so all this, how the space has exploded in fine-tuning this.
The move from data science toward AI engineering is perhaps, or software engineering in general. I think in coming years it will be indistinguishable between software engineering.
Carl called it in the first season when he said that now we have all these different. We I'm this, and this, and then maybe he said something like, you know what. I'm waiting for the time when the software engineer knows Keras as well.
Yeah. I think that will happen soon.
So it's all software engineering.
So the title was Data Strategist and Analyst.
It wasn't data scientist. Okay.
All right. Because the term came a little bit later on. And I remember that clearly because in 2015, when I was doing research on LinkedIn, in Nordics, we only had 975 people. with the title of data science, and you had like a thousands and
Statistician.
tens of thousands of people in the United States, and that was basically one also the mega trends that I'd say like, oh wait, this is happening and we are not on the train, so we need to basically go at it. This was the when we got in touch and started talking about it, but it was very, very few. And you know, when you search something on LinkedIn, it says like 975, you can cut that to 10, and then probably it was 97, because that is how, if you Google right now how many data scientists in the Nordics you have, approximately it will be around 400,000, but then in reality that is not the figure, it's probably much less than that.
But prioritization and a move to engineering. That's sort of my summary.
I mean, I think, yeah. So in last year, a lot more companies were starting to understand that to properly find value from data, they need to have more data scientists, they need to have engineers that can work together in cross-functional teams to actually build products, to productize
Perfect
the
summary.
value they have. Awesome. Should we just take a quick...
Can we jump? Oh,
Yes.
please. What's your angle? Maybe if I ask you for the societal media version or the research version, or you can do both.
Yeah, I think we've spoken a lot about this, media version of it and the extreme hype, of course. They always focus on the latest thing that going mainstream, like ChatGPT and whatnot.
So is it generative AI then that sort of is the label of the, what's the media or mainstream summary of 2022? Or do you have another label?
I mean, it was so many, amazing models. Unfortunately, most of them are generative, which are the most popular ones. And we already spoken about so many of them. But, there are other ones. What was the name of it? One that Meta did, the Galactica one.
What was that all about? I remember that but it flew through.
Yeah, and they actually shut it down very quickly. It was generating research articles. It did so with really high value, but of course it was lying it sometimes, just as ChatGPT is also, just making up things. But it making up things with a very, very high degree of confidence. And it sounds awesome. The grammar is perfect. And it sounds like it has such a strong, what do you call it? Like confidence in what you're saying. So it makes you trust it. But why should you? I mean, that will also make up a lot of things. And when Galactica came out, this was, I don't know, 3 months ago or something.
So what was the essence of a Galactica? Because I didn't follow it completely.
Yeah, Meta made another big language model, but that was trained on actually writing research articles and helping out with doing the proper referencing that you should do for writing research articles. And then people tried it out and so, you can write fake articles and you can make it, contain the content you want. But no shit. That's what all of these kind of generative.
Smart. Yippee. It makes me sound smart.
And it really become this kind of big backlash to Meta saying, this will be horrible abuse and people will start to publish articles that are complete fake and blah, blah, blah. I think it was sad that they had to shut it down.
What did you like about it? What was cool about it?
I think the research aspect of being able to actually produce research articles with surprisingly high level of accuracy in terms of it could even write the mathematical formulas and whatnot was really impressive.
I don't get it. So you don't need to be a researcher anymore. Could you, was it just prompting or what?
You could prompt it. Yes.
Did you put your data in there or how did that work?
No, you don't need the data. It makes it up.
That sounds like fake.
But it is fake. Of course it's fake. What do you think GPT is? The normal GPT is just fake. You prompt it in whatever way that you want it, and it makes you. It produces text that you want to have. I think just because it became so obviously clear about the abuse that generative AI can have, it made people and media react in a very, very strong way, which is kind of sad. And then of course we had the Lambda thing, the Google other chatbot thing before ChatGPT.
Yeah, is it conscious?
Yes.
What was that all about?
What was his name? Blake. Or something, I don't know, a Google engineer that was actually a priest, for 17 years as well. I had to look him up at that time, and he actually had a presentation in 2017, I believe, about that AI even at that time had some kind of consciousness, and this is really one of his core agenda, opinions that he wants to put forward. And then he had this interview with the Lambda Google AI chatbot, and he said it's surely conscious, and it wrote something about, what are you afraid about? And I'm afraid about being shut down. and of course he had biased that with a lot of prompting in advance to make it say what he wanted it to say.
But what is the core? If we compare Lambda with ChatGPT, what is Lambda?
So Lambda is a big Google chatbot model that I don't remember the exact detail how it was trained, but it was surprisingly efficient, and it didn't have a user interface that was open and free for everyone as ChatGPT had, but it was really, really good at having a conversation, and that it really can also put having the discussion on point, so to speak. It keeps on topic, and if I remember correctly,
and it remembers what you're saying and keeps the red thread of the conversation.
Yes, so it keeps on topic, even if you try to stray apart with some kind of rabbit hole that you and me always go into.
So they would not conscious.
But then it was similar in many ways, but then it was a big backlash for that, and I think it's a bit sad, but it's kind of interesting to see. I think that there are so many other technical interesting parts that come up.
Let's go there instead. I mean, we already covered the generative AI and ChatGPT. Yeah. That's the super sort of trend, I guess, in media.
Yeah.
But I even remember you were okay. Background story here. You were super keen to have a panel and themes on some core
the JEPA thing.
Core papers being published. That made you really excited, Anders. The JEPA or I don't know, paper and stuff like that. So that sort of was, I guess, I could see that as highlights when I see a kid in the candy store kind of thing from an old guy. What was that all about?
Yeah, that was a really interesting paper. So JEPA is about a joint embedding prediction architecture that Jan LeCun from Meta wrote with some of his researchers. And it was more of a position paper. It wasn't really a research article.
Now, what do we mean with the position paper?
So it's just trying to put forward, these are some of my thinking without being, scientific about it. Is really saying, I think this is the proper way to move towards artificial general intelligence.
So here we have one of the most prominent researchers saying, what are we doing and what is lacking and what should we be focusing on in order to reach AGI?
And he put forward, some kind of set of components on what's missing with deep learning today to actually move towards something that has much more generative intelligence in some way, or general intelligence. I said generative. I'm sorry, I'm a bit damaged.
We are damaged. We are damaged.
No, but I think if you speak about it, I will paraphrase now because he actually has a lot of these components in this brain, and he has parts of the world model in some kind of thing that's missing today, which I certainly agree with. Some kind of configurator that can take some data and configure the part of the network just for the task that you're interested in right now. Just as a brain, it doesn't use all the neurons. If you want to play chess or drive a car or play the guitar, you use different parts of the brain, and you have some kind of configurator that tries to find, what are the proper parts of the brain that should be activated in this instance and so forth. So trying really, and for me, I have my own kind of thinking.
I know this, Anders, because you've been trying it out on several of our guests. And I assume it has some founding in the JEPA paper.
Yeah, yes, it was certainly
reinforced by because you always talk about some core 4 areas that you think is quite interesting that we should pursue if we want to go for AGI.
Yes.
Share it, please.
So the most obvious one, of course, is that AI of today is very narrow and the human brain is very general. And what I mean with that is that we can actually have the same network, the neural network that we all have in our brain to handle so many different tasks. I mean, you can play the synths, and I cannot. But and Goran can sing. I can try, but I fail all the time.
But we will test it out on karaoke later tonight.
We should. But we all have, a large number of tasks that the humans can do, some better than others, but still it's like tens of thousands of tasks.
So generative traits.
Yes.
What does that equate to technically?
So in an AI deep learning network of today, you usually have a very, very specific data set that is doing a very specific thing. It could be classifying images. You could be trying to understand CAT scan images of the human brain. You could be trying to understand what the genre of a music audio clip is. It could be doing, recommender systems for Spotify or whatnot. But it's a very small and very narrow and very specific task. And it can only do that and nothing else. But what we're seeing now actually with GPT, this is actually one of the positive things with all the generative models that we're seeing. They are moving to a much more generative architecture, which is really cool. But still, it's nothing close to the human brain. So we're still lacking behind a lot there.
But are we now also touching on maybe one of the huge trends of this year that we haven't spoken about, and it's used scale is good.
Yes, scaling laws and
scaling. Like some people argue, you can have a fairly dumb AI and just add massive amounts of data, and it becomes quite strong.
I mean, if people don't, I'm really fascinated that things like GPT did work. And
that it actually works, right?
Yes, and the reason I think it's I wish people thought like this. GPT has a super simple. It's actually very, very simple the way it's constructed. Yeah. The only thing it's doing, the only objective function it has is predict the next word. From that extremely simple objective function, just trying to understand, given the previous words, what should the next word be, it seems to be able to build up a general kind of semantic of the world. What the world model, what a large language model rather is, I would argue, is a knowledge base, is an understanding
huge knowledge base
of the whole internet.
Extreme knowledge base.
So basically they scrape the whole internet, they put all of that into the model and they train it, and it can actually in that way understand what whatever kind of artist you can think of is, whatever kind of everything is.
So scale has a core impact on the generality.
Yes, and with that you can with that kind of simplistic objective function, just trying to understand the next word, in the same ways understand what does it really mean to generate a painting that has, say, a good painter. Rembrandt. I mean,
like with the style of Rembrandt.
And he understands what that means from a semantical point of view in a way that it can instruct DALL-E to actually generate an image like that. From simply understanding to predict the next word. That kind of scale is really strange.
So scale brings a phenomenon we almost didn't predict. Now,
yes,
help me here, because I think the second topic that you are sharing with Jan LeCun idea here is the world model, or whatever you want to call that. Yeah. What do we mean with the world model as a second topic? Then?
So GPT doesn't have a world model. ChatGPT doesn't have a world model. Tesla does have a world model.
Let's go into examples. I love it.
So the difference here is that Tesla doesn't really have a model of the whole world. It only have a model of what the world is around the car, if you take the full self-driving part of Tesla. But it does have some kind of state, some kind of understanding of right now, I have my car right here, and there are some other cars in some lanes beside me, and some kind of pedestrians and bicyclists and whatnot close by. And it constantly is updating some kind of real time, or at least some kind of state of what the current state of the world is around it.
So the world around the world impacts the car, if to simply put it like that.
So then it has a set of perception models to take all the 8 cameras around the car, and it actually transform it from the raw pixel data that it has into some what Elon Musk calls a vector space.
Yeah.
So that vector space.
So let's use this word now, because Elon is, or Tesla is highlighting that we have one part of the problem is the perception. Perception is collecting of the data, and then we bring it into the
collection and interpreting.
Collection and interpreting,
Yes.
and then we bring it into what Tesla calls the vector space, which is essentially the world model of a Tesla car.
Yeah, exactly.
And basically, I heard this argument before, and so I let me try it if I can do it. So we joked about it and say, like, we've been able to drive cars, and AI has been driving cars in Grand Theft Auto gaming engine for years. So when you get the data and the perception into the vector space, what we should do not to crash in GTA, well, the AI has figured that out for years. That's not the real. So it boils all the way back to when we ask Elon. I say so.
Or Lex Friedman at least asked.
Yeah.
Yes.
No. We did.
Of course. If we get Elon on the show,
we have a video to prove it soon.
Yeah, of course.
No, but the point is the perception space is the hard part.
Yeah,
not
so
the
Lex
vector
actually
space.
asked Elon once in one of his podcasts saying, which of the two problems, the perception problem of taking pixel data into some vector space, or the reasoning part of, given that you have this kind of world model, what action should I take to optimize whatever goal? And the goal in Tesla is kind of easy. It's just, go from point A to B in a safe and efficient way.
Until you get to the trolley problem.
Oh, well, perhaps it can fix that as well. Yeah, but yes. So then the question is really, is the reasoning about what action to take harder than the perception problem? And Elon said very confidently that the hard problem is the perception problem. Once you have the vector space, it's kind of easy to choose what action to take, and the proof is GTA, as you said before.
And now comes the hard question for you, Anders. When you imagine a world model or a vector space that are generalist, what the hell are we talking about?
Well, if we take ChatGPT as an example, then it doesn't have a single word model. It has tens of millions of active users all day, but they don't share a common world model. What they do have is only a model of the session of the user. So it does have an understanding of, this is the session, the question I've asked in the past, and it keeps a state at least of that specific user. So it has like a user model, but it doesn't have a world model.
And so what is a world model again?
It's a common understanding of the world right now.
But
the real world, physical world.
But in practice, would you get closer to that if you stored all the sessions with the users and their user interaction with GPT
and update the GPT or ChatGPT
so the
with
difference
that?
Is here, like,
and imagine if OpenAI is doing that, which I think they are.
Okay, so an example now, how can ChatGPT get more of a world model is that you have a static model right now.
Yeah.
But when it interacts with its users and it updates itself.
So all the parameters in this huge ChatGPT model that it does have is static right now. I mean, it may update it once a week or something, but it's not being updated with every user interaction it's having right now.
And I assume this is the segue
to the next
third core point.
You're so, I'm impressed, Henry. I mean, you know exactly what I'm going to say. Yes. So, I mean, the other part is then the difference between how deep learning models are trained today and how human brain are trained. And that is the online versus batch mode. So in all the deep learning models we have today, they're trained like for months with insane amount of computational resources with extremely huge amount of data. And then they have a new model and they potentially push that into production. And that is how at least deep learning models are still used today by most companies, and especially these kind of tech giants today. But human brain, no. So, just me speaking to you right now makes you update your synapses.
Every second, every word I'm lingering on, and I'm learning so I know what the fourth topic will be.
Yeah. And that's a really big difference. And this is, a field that I'm hoping a lot, for how to fix this, because it's not an easy problem to fix. But there are these kind of technologies called neuromorphic computing that I have a high hope for.
Okay, and unimorphic.
Neuromorphic. So That's actually trying to move from the traditional type of computers that we have today, which is this kind of von Neumann architecture, having a CPU and a memory, and they are separate. And moving them together instead, because the human brain, the neuron, is both a CPU and a memory. A single neuron cell does have a state, and it also have a computational power that it can use. So that's combined. And that's not how computers works today, but neuromorphic computing is moving towards that state.
And this is a different direction than quantum computing, as an example.
Yes, very much so. I could easily move into quantum as well.
Not now. Let's stay on course. Let's stay on course. Let's stay on course on the third one, and then we're going to move into the fourth.
And we can do that because we already spoken a bit about it. But that's the high-level reasoning part. So what we have today with deep learning models is mainly perception.
But it's interesting because to me, when you describe it like this, the world model and real time online is connected.
Yes. It is.
You can't have the one without the other.
You can. I mean, Tesla cars does have. I mean, you can do that.
So can we talk about narrow consciousness and narrow world models?
Yeah,
narrow world models.
Let me summarize before we move into consciousness. Then
we need to have the fourth one as well.
Yeah, the fourth one was reasoning. So
that was too fast for me then.
Okay, so the summary is basically one, generality.
Yeah.
Moving from narrow to general intelligence. Second is the world model, as you spoke about, moving into some kind of commonly used state that is shared by everyone.
And a good example is the vector space in the world model of a car.
Yes. And you need some kind of external memory, or as the third example is if you actually change the parameters as you use it. But that's not how deep learning works today. I mean, the deep learning is run either in training mode or in inference mode.
But we think we need online deep neural networks in order to get to the next level.
I think for general AI, we need to move towards that state, yes.
And then the fourth one is reasoning.
High-level reasoning. So
and what do we mean with high-level reasoning?
So reasoning can be done, today rather well with techniques like search or like reinforcement learning. And we've seen AlphaGo and chess playing bots
go back to the human. What do we mean with high-level reasoning?
So that's actually moving to consciousness then. But we know that we have an ability in our prefrontal cortex to have some kind of word model inside our brain that is basically like a video game of the world. Is this kind of world model that is some kind of representation of what we think. I think there's a person sitting there, another person sitting there. I'm not sure. It could be a simulation, but at least
he's angry. He's talking to me.
Yes.
And she's hot. And
all of that is stored is stored inside the brain of me. And you have a bit different representation of the world. And Goran has a third that is a bit different as well. But we all have this kind of word model. So we look at the same
stuff, and we might pick up on different things.
Yeah. So given all these kind of word models that every human have, we have the ability to reason about what action to take. And this is of course dependent on us having a world model. But given that we have this kind of high level abstraction that represents the world, we can then reason about what action to take. And this is something that is not working that well today with AI, but is being worked with a lot. So given that we do have increasingly high level representation of the world in the brain, the reasoning part can be rather efficiently done, as Elon thinks. But we need to have that, and then we have, with all the four components combined, more general kind of intelligence, more online rather than batch, a world model, and high-level reasoning in place. That will be a big difference to that type of deep learning that we have today.
And just to wrap up that topic, what are the concrete things that are the more concrete problems we are working on today in order to reach this?
Generality. All the language models are moving.
Generality is
and generative AI in general is moving towards this in some way.
But then I think there are some other topics of. So I don't make a fool out of myself, but unsupervised learning and stuff like that. Because the problem is like to have the data sets, we cannot annotate at this scale.
Yeah,
we need to figure out something else here.
So a problem, of course, then with the current way of learning these systems is that we need to label things manually, and having humans in place to label things that it should.
Because we need
on.
to label it in order to have a training data set in order for the AI to have.
For some system, but the research today is moving towards self-supervised learning, and that can enable us to learn without having other people's efforts in place. It's like if you want to learn to play chess, and the only way for you to play chess would be for me to give you a piece of paper saying, in this position, this is the right action. In this position, this is the right action. And I need to write it down, you need to learn it. That's more supervised learning, and it's very inefficient. And we need to have more, so self-supervised learning is Janne Kuhn's, favorite thing.
So we get too many strands of very relevant research to tackle technical or operational resource problems on the way here. Is that a way to summarize it?
Yeah, but more efficient techniques to train these networks without having to label everything. I mean, if you take a large language models, just the ability to predict the next word is self-supervision. And the bird that do the math model thing, or the IT for images, all of these are self-supervised. No human has ever gone into the full internet of data collected and labeled that in a way. That would be absurd. So all of these is moving and using techniques to enable generality without having humans being involved in some way for the learning process.
And how is this relevant, do you think, or applicable to more narrow operational business problems today?
So, I mean, one obvious trait is that we are building an increasingly number of foundational models, as we say. So with a foundational model means that someone has trained with a lot of computational power and using self-supervised learning techniques, models that can perceive the world in different ways and understand text, images, audio, and whatnot. But then you can take those and fine-tune it for the purpose you want to use it for. So by moving more to this kind of transfer learning, which is the common term for this approach, will enable so many companies to make real value in their companies for their use cases and their data set. So this is, I think, the more valuable approach today for most companies. It's not the chat GPT approach. This would be the proper approach.
Oof.
Tough, but
anyway,
true.
So I took us, as we always do, down a rabbit hole.
Yes.
Do you want to take us back up to maybe more themes, or should we go into more guests? Goran.
I would like to bring a thing because I think that we didn't point it out. I think that we went through what happened in enterprise too fast. Or maybe actually, let's go first. Let's do like that. Let's go through the recap, and then we can talk about next year.
Yes, because next year,
let's do that.
Okay.
Yeah. How long have we spoken now for?
Way too long, Anders.
We should
because we said
1 hour 30 minutes.
Really? Oof. Okay.
Because our aim was to have a summary in 1 hour.
Yeah.
We are impossible.
Yes. We will have a summary
and without
in 1
the guest,
hour.
without the
With
guest,
ChatGPT.
you take away the guest, and we're worse.
No. The recap starts now, so that means we have another hour. So that's
but
Okay.
Maybe we should just do some highlights of. Anders, you take it away. Maybe it's better.
Yeah, so 35 episode. We can't go through all of them. Should I pick someone at random, perhaps?
No, but we had some. Okay, we had some really interesting guests, and we had a really fun preparation. In order for Goran to put this into the comment section, he said, "Can you summarize the key ideas and the key themes with this guest in 3 words?" Which is really hard, by the way.
It is.
So we actually prepared. We did some preparation.
Yeah.
I'm pretty proud.
Tonight, in a very quick fashion.
Yeah, with beers.
You didn't. Anders did. So just
No, I did. I gave it to Anders, and Anders gave it to you.
Yeah.
I was there.
Yes.
I was drinking beer, but I was there.
Yes.
But maybe so we have some clickbaits. We have some ideas on some core themes, on some core guests, but we can't take 35. So I let you choose, Anders.
I can start, and then you pick the next one. Then.
I can pick I will pick out of my head, and you can pick from the list.
Yes. So that's one of the advantages of having, obsessive note-taking behavior as I do. So I have a lot of notes from every guest that we had. But yeah, I'd love to start with Jan Bosch then, I think.
Yes, we don't go in chronological order. We just go what comes to mind. I like that.
I mean, for me, I'm really impressed with him, and he's, for one, extremely knowledgeable in software engineering as a main topic, of course, but then moving more into AI in recent years, and now into AI engineering. But besides, being professor in Chalmers and having these kind of awesome ideas of how to do research in these kind of modern times, he's also an extremely good speaker, and one of the best one I've actually seen. And that's, I think, sometimes I said, if you want to have some set of criteria for, who can really impact our society, knowledge, yes, that's a necessity that you need to have, but you need to have a communication skill as well to be able to move people and explain what you're thinking in an efficient and understandable way. And I think he can do that to an extreme. And
what was your highlights in that conversation? Because I wasn't there, but I listened to it in the car, and I actually have some gems that I'm using on a daily basis.
Oh, really?
That Jan Bosch gave us.
What is that then?
No, you please go first.
Well, he has so many different things, being more customer centric and having, the more engineering aspects to data and AI, which I think is really important. And also I think that he also he has both an experience from academia, but also industry and working in Nokia and what they now have, what's called the software center and so many different companies that he's working with there, makes him have a unique experience, I think.
And just to follow on yours before I take my own major takeaway, that's my cliffhanger. I think how he explained and the structure of software center, how you have a very, very good collaboration and how should I put it, operating model across academia, large enterprise, and projects, PhDs that is typically working on long contracts, still being able to be agile is recommendable.
It's agile research. Yeah, that was
agile research.
That was very surprising.
A super cool concept.
I like it actually. Yes.
Yeah.
I
okay,
agree.
And how cool that is. That was not my main takeaway. My main takeaway from Jan Bosch. He said it. Nail it before you scale it. That is one of those T-shirt quotes, right? And me working with Derax and working sort of understanding stuff, and the context was we were talking about what is the usefulness of venture capital, and what happens if you get a shitload of money too early. The problem is when you haven't really figured out exactly how it works, you're still in this sort of lean startup, fail fast mode. If you're not careful, you're fucking it up and scaling it before you nailed it. And what you're wanting to do with fail fast and learn faster kind of approach that Daniel Ek promotes in Spotify, you want to understand what to scale and what not to scale. So I think his argument was really refreshing that you might not want
to scale it too fast. Yeah.
And you don't want the VC capital too early. Even he was going that far.
Yeah. I've seen a lot of startups being failed because of VC funding.
So nail it before you scale it was my biggest takeaway from Jan Bosch, and which is fantastic advice.
I like it. Another analogy that he did that really stuck in my brain, and it was from another talk actually he gave, was about the doghouse analogy.
Yes.
So he compared like traditional software engineering versus AI engineering, and he said, traditional software engineering, they have a huge arsenal of tools, a tool set, which is similar to how to build a skyscraper. So in a skyscraper, you have to have the extreme engineering best practices in place to build a safe and well-working skyscraper. Well, and that's how traditional software engineering works. You have a huge number of really well-tuned and working tools, everything from GitOps and CI/CD pipelines and how to monitor and detect problems and whatnot, and tooling for doing coding properly, and so many things. Then when it comes to AI development, that's more like a doghouse.
No, that was the doghouse.
Yes. So the tooling you have is similar to how you build a doghouse when it comes to AI software today, compared to a skyscraper. And that, I think it could be a bit extreme, but I think it's really apt.
But it puts
in some way.
It puts a picture in the head of the difference of we are still on a huge accelerating trajectory to stabilize AI practices.
Yeah, and the tooling around like AI development is really immature. Yeah. And I wish more people understood that. And he phrased it really well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so John Bosch, huge shout out, John. You're welcome on the guest. Bring a couple of PhDs maybe, and we can talk about some of your projects. He's a welcome return.
Yes. Any favorite that you want to pick, or should I pick someone else?
I'll pick the next one.
Okay.
I will actually start picking out Helena Hörnerbrandt. Used to have a real contrast.
Yes.
And Helena Hörnerbrandt, for me, she is all about change management. So she has a background in OM-gruppen, going Nasdaq, and she's been working in this space in quite huge, large mergers and acquisitions, and all the stuff that goes around with that, with tech and data and AI. So that's how she started out in his young career. Moving on, and then sort of she's been a high senior executive in Scania. And I have had the fortune to know her for a long part of my life, and then work with her now in the later parts. And her angle is about the people perspective, the AI perspective, the data, the digitalization perspective is all about change management. And that resonates with me very strongly. I mean, like I that was my part, the storytelling at the Dare Awards Fire Talk I did. AI is not a tech problem. AI is an organizational problem. How we drive change, how we adopt things. AI is not about robots. AI is about people, coding robots or using robots. So I don't know. She has a lot of different interesting perspectives on what it takes to drive change, hold on to change, and the dirty business of change, so to speak. And she was sharing quite brutally or honestly her learnings. Yeah. So I find that very. So that was the complete opposite, sort of going almost like to the people side of AI, and that's why I picked her as the second one that I would like to highlight.
Yeah, and I don't think it can be said enough. As you said, AI is so much more than the technology, and trying to understand the people and the culture needed, and change management that needs to be in place to actually make it valuable is something that cannot be overstated, right?
And it's it's funny how we talk about the algorithm, this small part in the prototype, and then we have the paper from Google highlighting how much more tech is going on.
The hidden technical depth of machine learning.
The hidden technical depth from 2015, and I actually, as a fun part, I've been trying to make a joke out of it and say this is just bullshit. I'm going to segue to another guest we had. Andreas Lundmark at BCG.
Right.
He, and I stole it from him, or I don't know if he stole it from me. I don't know. I used it on stage, but I think I stole it from BCG. They talk about the 10, 20, 70 rule. Right. So 10%, to succeed and have value from AI. 10% is about the algorithm. 20% is about the data and the tech. 70% is about people, the ways of working, practices, organization, how we organize work. And for me now, when you read Harvard Business Review on, we are investing more and more and more, but we don't really feel we get more data driven. To me, that's a symptom highlighting that we are focusing and investing in the 10 and the 20%, but not enough in the 70%. And for me, Helena and Andreas then goes together as a core story here.
Well said. And I think that I've seen a lot of companies, I've spoken to a lot of companies that say that they're really interested in starting becoming more data and AI driven, and then they think, we actually have started that. Okay, what have you done? Well, we have this thesis student now that is working 6 months to build a prototype, and then we'll see if that's useful. Otherwise, we'll scrap it. And they completely miss the point. And
miss the point.
They need to have understanding that it's so much more. You need a really big investment to actually provide a value. And the 10% of the algorithm and the 10% or 20% of the data is one part, but it's a really small part if you truly want to make a change.
Yeah, and this is the joke, right?
Yeah.
Like the 10% scales into the 20% in this paper, and this is only 30% out of the other 70% that is not even covered by the Google paper.
Yeah.
That's my argument. But who is next on your favorite list?
So many to choose from. Okay. Off here is usually this is kind of a scary list.
Goran is producing the full list of 35 episodes with the. It's impressive, man. I'm pretty proud.
I think that we have done a very good circle around. I think it was a very good season. But let me take the.
Yeah, you choose one.
Yeah, you choose one.
So I'm a user, what is called use case type of a guy. But this time, I think that I will choose another important topic that. Unfortunately, I have heard so many times this year, and it breaks my heart because you mentioned basically change management, the 10, 20,
70 rule of
70
Andreas.
rule and etc. But we are forgetting about one thing when it comes to this, and that is actually leadership.
Ooh,
right. And unfortunately, this has been a year when I have heard all over again that basically companies are going in their old ways of working.
Are you thinking about Jens?
No. Jens was talking about the leadership in general, but just basically that motivated me a little bit more to summarize my takeaways for this year that I would like to take in the next year, which we will discuss this shortly. But yes, Jens was actually talking about
I think
that
Jens was the guy who highlighted leadership.
Management of data and AI transformation. And I think what is important here to mention is that we cannot move forward with organizational politics and keeping information and a hostage in order to get and prevail in the enterprise organizational setup. What I mean by that is that we have like a very, very big mid-size management that are capable of driving change that needs to have room to make that change.
Yeah.
And placing management, and that is not the case in every organization, but in some it is, placing management to drive their own political gains on the behalf of the organization is probably not the best way how to drive change and AI transformation forward. Without picking up any chairs or any organizations here, I think that this needs to stop if we want to move forward, because this creates not only AI divide between countries. This we in order for us to move forward, we first need to break the AI divide between inside.
Yeah,
we need to stop with silos. We need to stop with organizational divide. We need to stop dividing AI with data science, AI with IT, and etc. We need to stop making functions that are not there to drive change, being in charge of the change. So the change needs to start within the organization. You cannot transform an organization being data-driven when you have the top leadership not willing to change the way how they operate. And that is the point.
And the point here, Goran, and this is a huge rabbit hole, by the way, because it changes our steering, it changes our mandates and all these topics. And I think that's maybe why we have a structure that is in some ways an anti-pattern, if I use the software engineering words, that is not helping us. And we can go so deep into that rabbit hole, so I want to avoid it. But I think you're spot on. Goran. But it warrants. This is why one person not on the list here that we want to have as a guest is Robert Walton. Robert Walton in Volvo, and we have been discussing, we need to have an AI conference or data conference for business people. So basically, I guess you can go to the research conference, the NeurIPS and all that, and then you can go to the sort of the business conferences for data people, like Data Innovation Summit. But we actually need to have a data AI conference that is purely for non-techie people, and we need to do something completely different in order to break these problems. Because we don't, to be humble, we are not doing the wrong thing out of ill will. We the anti-patterns that we think about for AI, they are patterns that have served us well in the era of efficiency and in the analog industrial era. So we need to address the other people who are not data people, so to speak, on their turf, in their language.
Yes.
This is I'm putting the gauntlet down. I'm throwing let's do this with Robert. Robert highlighted this to me, and I fully agree with him.
And I have another story. One of the best panel actually this year on one of our conferences on Data 2030, and Helena was part of that panel. It was a CDO panel, in which two of the CDOs that were sitting there were actually leaving their positions to get something. So they had a lot to say. And I love that because, when people do not have education. Yes, exactly. And one of the biggest stories that I actually heard about, in that was that the story of the CDO actually working his ass off 5 years to create the value and to show the value of all the data management that has been going on in the company. The panel is already public, so you can go on YouTube and find it. It's not a problem. So the story is that actually he's working for 5 years to find a specific value that can actually show that, hey, what we have been doing for the past 5 years, this actually makes sense. So he finds the value, and the value is output of 14% impact increase on the bottom line, right? So he goes to the manager and says, the business manager says, hey, I found this pattern. It's 14% increase. So what do you think that the manager does, right? Natural, would you say that he will accept it? He doesn't. Why he doesn't? Because sometimes when we create products, we think that this is necessary, but also those products are creating hardship for somebody else because probably maybe they need to work 14 times extra. Maybe that is not in the power of the concern of that person by itself. So the person declines. So the person leaves, right? So approve my value, nobody wants to take it. And then he takes this opportunity to the CEO. And the CEO now says, you're talking in my terms now. 14% increase? Hell yeah. Let's do this. Right?
But
do you see my point?
I see your point, but I think it circles back to the whole idea that in order to reach next level, it's a new style of organization which is hardcore to the bone, back to the story of productization. To have different mandates, different organizations where we are cross-functional in our competences, working for a common goal.
Yes.
Because what you are highlighting here in the large enterprise is conflicting goals, or conflicting efforts, or conflicting agendas. And so we have now organized ourselves in a way that we have conflicts, friction.
Yes, exactly. And those frictions can potentially be diminishing to all the efforts that we have done so far. And we will talk about that in a minute, but it's also a segue about something else. So until now, in 84 episodes, we have done exploration of use cases and most of the challenges regarding organizational setup, processes, technologies, and people. And I think that all of these people, 84 people that has been here, they are ready to change.
Yeah.
So what we
the
need
people
to
who
have
are here
on
are the ones who are ready.
Exactly. So what we need to do in the next, let's say, seasons forward, is to bring the senior management to see how they see it, that this could be used in the organization, because these people are ready. The mid-management is ready. The data scientists are ready. We know the processes, we know the technology, we know the talent, we know the use cases. We are ready. How do you drive change now? Change management, transformation in the entire organization. And imagine if you can find a CFO to come and sit here and say, like, how this is going to... How do you put the value of data on a?
But Goran, now you jump, because I thought we had a couple of more.
Yes. Okay. Fine.
A couple of more reflections on the guests, and then we can move into what we need to do and what we should be doing.
I think the time is flying by here, and we can move into some kind of future reflection points. Or do you have some other people that you'd like to?
No, I was more giving the space to you for the next one. Do one more, and then we go there.
One more, okay.
Do one techie one. Do one researchy one.
Okay. I'll pick actually Love.
Yes.
Love Börjesson, the head of the KB lab at the National Library that we have in Sweden. I think people don't recognize some of the impact that his work will have and what they have done there. For one, of course, they have an advantage of having huge amount of data of Swedish text, audio, images collected in the National Library, but that also exists together with a lab that have actually a large amount of competence that they have there, and the computational power and connection to all the EU-funded data centers that we have throughout Europe is actually kind of unique. And that they have already produced so many models and put that into open with KB BERT, with KB NEAR, with the various Whisper and Wave2Vec models for understanding audio and so much more. It is actually something that I wish people understood what the value is. And I just want to really highlight that in some sense. And I wish more people understood that if we can do this, if we can actually find the way to not copy the tech giants, but actually when we do have huge amount of data that we can make use of and actually do have a competence to train models that other companies have free access to and also have the computational resources to do so, that's actually a very rare combination.
Oh, I'm glad when you chose Love to talk about Love now, I need to confess, Love helped me quite a bit with my Data to Innovation Summit keynote this year.
Really?
And I reached out to Love to try to prove a point, and KB could prove the point beautifully. I put the hypothesis that the world we are moving into now is around extreme innovation pressure, extreme speed of innovation, and ChatGPT proves that once again. I used the BERT model and the paper of attention is all you need in being published in 2017, and the widespread use of BERT in Google in less than 5 years.
Google search and whatnot.
Extreme productization of an AI model to highlight the speed of innovation. And then I highlighted that this is one dimension, but the other dimension that what we all need to be good at is economies of learning and adapting what is out there. And then I highlighted this example by following the progression of the timeline of KB in relation to language models. And I asked Love, could you highlight the major steps in your journey? I got them to 30%, 50% in our interview, but I wanted him to nail down a timeline, and he did that for me, and it highlighted an extreme point, which is there is no way in fucking hell that anyone, Love or anyone else, can adapt and do those crazy things that they did if they're not continuously adapting to the landscape around them. So they would realize how they could use KB Bird. They realized use case by use case what narrow language models are useful, and then they adapted and put that to the market.
Right.
And the core proof in the pudding here is Love has done something unique. They have published their APIs on Hugging Face.
Yes.
Which means that the proof is in the pudding. How many downloads do we have of what he's been doing? So we can argue to death about anything. The proof is in the pudding. How many downloads do you have per month?
It's being data-driven. Yes.
It's completely data-driven. And the stats, and this is in September. Oh, sorry. No, May? March? When did we have Data Innovation Summit this year? May. In May this year, there was 65,000 downloads.
Extreme.
No, per month.
Yeah.
So these are researchers. These are companies who are then utilizing these models to embed them in their products or in their research. It's amazing. It's absolutely amazing.
And I must also congratulate them on the choices they're making on what models to produce and publish, because they're actually thinking about the models that actually are useful for companies to use and download.
This is a loaded argument.
It is. But I very much admire that choice that they have made. And I think that's one of the reasons that they have these kind of high download numbers that they do have.
So in essence, they have gone for extreme use case oriented approaches to understand what the researchers need for a particular task, and then ultimately sorted out language models that are suitable, as cheap as possible, as efficient as possible for those use cases.
That are possible to productionize, as you say, and actually provide value in a quick sense to companies, and that's not an easy choice to make.
No, and the whole idea, when you make it completely open, when you put an API, that's what I call open. Put an API on an open
or even more.
platform.
They are putting the whole model available for free to download. So that's truly making it open, I think. So it's
yeah.
really
So
cool.
talking about making data available that is useful.
Data, or models.
Or models
in their
no,
case.
but data is not useful because data needs to be
Yes.
modeled to be useful.
Yes, and no one could use the full data set that they have in KB to do, or not, or how should I rephrase it? Not everyone could or should retrain a model on the full data set that they have there. So it's better to have someone in a centralized way create a set of foundational models that they have done, put them in the open on Hugging Face, etc., and their GitHub page and whatnot, so that other companies can download it and fine-tune it and find true value in their specific needs.
Yeah.
And so that is truly how you make use of data and AI in a good way, I think.
Yeah. So kudos to Love. I think that's a good one.
Yes.
And I can take the use case because I said I always like good use cases. So we had a number of those this year. So we started with Göran Shordell from Boliden, talking about mining and AI and how AI can be used in the mining operations. Then we had Henrik Landgren, who was it was a great episode about AI and VC founding and how you can actually potentially forecast the revenue of
We have a data-driven approach to funding.
Yeah.
That's kind of very new, I think.
Let's stop one second here. There's more rabbit hole. We are talking about the data-driven approach to funding.
Yeah.
And Henrik Landing has pioneered this first with Motherbrain in EQT Ventures,
yes.
where they are trying to have AI to help them pick the next unicorn. And then he flips it into
his own company, R Capital. Yeah.
our capital in order to pick who we should give loans to, and basically potentially shifting the game to new market product category where we are funding startups not with VCs but with loans, which allows the startup
so a new
person
type of funding and a new type of choosing and
data-driven support
evaluating it.
to
Yes.
funding of startups. We said data-driven VC. That is actually incorrect. It's not data-driven VC. That's one part of the story, but this is a data-driven way to funding of startups.
Funding. Yeah, funding is a better word. Yeah.
Amazing,
Yeah.
really cool.
Then we had Martin Lundqvist from Arundo talking about AI and industrial analytics. So that was
And he was
amazing.
talking about productization again, by the way.
All right,
He was
cool.
the way he can get analytics into less mature industry is productization.
Yes. Then I think we had like a very fun episode, and very thankful for getting him actually to Stockholm. So Mikael Zilkin was here from Arsenal, talking about
That's
AI
cool.
and football. I was like
AI and
really cool
football,
about that.
and then
right?
getting
Football,
Arsenal.
yeah.
And this was a little bit like, okay, so you put sensors on the stars.
Yes.
Where do you put them?
I mean,
In the
it was
underpants?
a beautiful thing. So if you haven't heard and you're a football fan, you need to search for episode 60.
So AI for performance in football. Ah,
Yes,
so
exactly.
cool.
Then we had Fredrik Löfgren,
Oh,
who
that
had
was great.
Elsa, I think.
Elsa, yes.
yeah.
Elsa,
The robot here, so AI and robotics, and that was fantastic. And we had like a camera towards
That's a
the
genius
robot.
in itself. There,
Yeah,
Fredrik
and I think
Löfgren.
it's area that will only grow. And even if we don't think it's big here, just how many people did we had here that has been on RoboCup?
We have
so many.
this is several
Yes.
we have on RoboCup. That's funny.
There's
It was a
lots
lot
people.
of them, right?
We
a
talked
fun
about
thing.
RoboCup with Sahar.
Yeah.
We talked about it
Fredrik
with
Heinz.
Marcus, Fredrik Heinz,
Many.
Fredrik Löfgren.
Fredrik Löfgren.
Marcus, yeah.
Marcus.
Marcus was there as well.
Yeah, right.
So then we had Ellen Allison, AI and Energy, and Mirs Proven. So that was
In a-
fantastic.
I'm
In a
gonna
very
I'm gonna
important
break,
topic.
I'm gonna break character.
Really? Oh, interesting.
All
No, but
right,
especially
so-
in these days, with the energy crisis that we're having, and actually having a data-driven approach for energy production or consumption, rather, is of course super.
I think it's really a shame that they didn't got the award this year, that the candidate. And then on the end, we finished actually with Bob Sturm and
That was
Rujing
amazing.
Huang regarding AI-generated music and AI song contest.
Yeah, that was news to me that we actually had not only a Eurovision song contest, but an AI song contest as well. And it's been running now for 3 years, and it's fourth one upcoming now.
You know what I did when I came home? I was just basically going through the web pages and
Yeah.
listening to songs, etc. And it's great things. It's great. It's really great things.
And I think one other thing that they pointed out time and time again there was that it's not really about, AI replacing humans there. It's really about co-creation.
Co-creation. But this is also what I see with ChatGPT and AI-generated art in general. And we have been discussing this quite in a number of occasions, actually, because it's all about the co-creation. The AI tool becomes the brush. It's a toolkit. So how do
Tool
we...
or whatever you call it, partner, tool or something.
Yeah, for me, it's like so I'm an amateur artist. That is for me a tool, right? It's speeding up the process of me creating something. Now, the challenge with that is that you, instead of creating something, you choose between what is presented to you, which is almost near to what you have thought of. And that is a little bit different in the creation process, because when you write music and songs and etc., you also get naked quite often and fast. What I mean by naked is that basically you put your own emotions, and more you get into the development process, more naked you become. You become. In this, you are not that much, because it's like, okay, this is.
But it's also like I myself have zero talent or very bad in both instruments and singing and creating music or paintings. And for me, to potentially be able to at some point in time create a song is something I very much look forward to. And in this way, you shouldn't call it to democratize music, but we should call it to, I guess, make music creation accessible
to everyone.
To everyone.
Yes,
right?
exactly. I mean, so now with GPT, you can create some sort of a lyrics. You can take those lyrics and put them into different tools where you can actually even mimic the voice of a particular artist.
Yeah.
And then you have AI generated beats and music that you can put that track on. And then you can just arrange it as you wish, and then there it goes. Isn't that strange? I mean, it's breaking all the normatives that we have an understanding about art.
It is.
And then the question is that art?
Yeah, I think it is, but for sure it's moving the boundaries, of what being creative really means,
right? In
some sense. But what they could show and speak about that, and having Rujing as well, which was this, PhD from Harvard and postdoc, and now moving into also these kind of more ethical and AI in business kind of topics. It was really inspiring to see, I think.
Then we had different type of theme coming up, popping up quite often, and that was actually AI ethics, fairness, and explainability, right?
Well, so, explainability or exploitability? Yeah.
No, this is explainability. This is a typo there. All right. So here first we started actually with Christian Goodman, and that was a fantastic episode and a lot of discussions there.
Yes.
Then we had Therese Svensson from IBM about AI fairness and explainability, including trustworthy AI. Then we had Peter Salin talking about human-centric AI.
Yeah,
I missed Silo AI.
I missed Peter. I of course, I had a long discussion with Peter and really enjoyed it at Dare Awards. But could you stop 1 minute on Peter there, because I missed that episode?
For one, I think he's an impressive person by himself. He's a professor in AI, but also been part of creating this awesome company called Silo AI, that is growing from Finland over to Sweden and other companies as well. And the people that he's a really impressive person, I would say, in himself. And I guess one connection that he has that few others have is also like a connection to the economics of the world, and understanding that part of it, and being able to connect data and AI to economics is something that was really interesting to hear.
And I think this maybe separates Peter from some of the most brilliant researchers we have found, and why he can have a successful Silo AI company, because it seems to me that he moves quite fluently from a quite research intense dimension to business, which is not so easy. It's not so easy. But it's academia also, is not always managing that, by the way.
But it's also very near to what you said before. So the dream is that you democratize AI and you put it in the hands of the end users, and that is the most important part. And and there is a number of companies that are actually fighting for that to become a reality. So
Silo AI is doing a good job here, yes. and I think this whole idea will have a quite research intense and PhD intense company working for business is quite cool, quite interesting. Quite.
It's a bit of what we spoke about, engineering first driven work in some way.
Yeah, engineering first research. We had this is actually another topic that I think is worthy of the final episode, and it's the highlight of. We try to explore what is academic research versus engineering research. You had another way of putting it: engineering first research versus pursuit of knowledge first research.
Yeah,
how would you put it?
If we simply try to define what engineering and science is, I think one way to define it, if you try to do it in a perhaps a bit more oversimplistic way, is still to say that the purpose of engineering and science is different. So the purpose of science is to build knowledge, I would argue. And then the purpose of engineering is to build a product. Now, to build a product, you need to have knowledge. And to build knowledge, you need to have sometimes products. So they are clearly overlapping, but there is a clear, I would argue, distinction between the two.
Core objective.
Yeah, the purpose of it. And then you can look at people like Elon Musk and whatnot that have a very, very clear engineering mindset and say, we simply want to build products now that helps the world, if it is to go to Mars or to help Twitter work or to make full self-driving cars or Neuralink to put chips in our brain and Starlinks to put satellites around the world and so many things. Then you have a very clear purpose of building products that helps or, either makes you money or helps the society in some way. And that leads to, you need to do research sometimes to know how the hell can I make a full self-driving car actually work? And you need to create new, knowledge to make that happen. So they actually are, I would say, spearheading a bit the research front as well. They're not publishing that much, but they are still doing research, I would argue. Then you have the more basic research that's being done in academia and universities, and they are from a more like scientific first approach and doing research in that angle. I think both complement each other really well. But I think what's been nice to see in the last couple of years is that the engineering first type of research has been increasing quite a lot.
I have two rabbit holes on your spiel.
Yes.
Let's start with the annoying one.
Okay.
I have a quote from Steve Jobs.
Yes.
That is actually speaking to you, but you are not an Apple fan.
No.
So that's my joke. That's my joke to you, Anders.
I'm trying to bite my tongue here, but yeah, okay.
But I found a very, very nice YouTube clip.
Yeah.
Of Steve Jobs. And he said, the doers are the real thinkers. Mm. And the point he was making is not until you set your mind to solve a real world problem as a product, self-driving cars, do you really get to the intricacies of the detailed devil that you need to solve. So his argument is very simple. Build products, have this as the main goal, and then basically the research is to solve problems. But it's the mindset that you get to other problems that are really useful to solve. Yeah. And this was my first dimension here. We stop there. Yeah,
but it's very similar to Elon Musk, of course, and I think both are very product-oriented people, and it's really nice to see. I am really biting my tongue not to speak negatively about Apple right now, but I wish that they were a bit more open.
But let's stick to the quote.
Okay.
The quote is good. I think it's a good quote. The doers are the thinkers.
I think they complement each other so well here, saying both that you should conduct research on things that you will have high value for, but also you can easily see that some things that you should conduct research on is very hard to know, will this become valuable or not? So that's a good reason for why basic research should be done.
Yeah, and we can flip the argument very easily.
Yes.
Because I take another example which is personal to my heart. Both my mom and dad are medical doctors. Right. Which happened to also pursue PhDs.
Yes.
And I asked a question to my dad. I think after we started the podcast, and a little bit influenced by you, Anders. Do we need basic or general research? And he almost looked at me like I was swearing in church.
Yeah, I can imagine that.
And he's like, how do you think we got to penicillin? How do you think we got to the real breakthroughs? And how do we stumble across things if we're not casting a net broader than the next product increment, so to speak? So this is some truth in that, of course, as well.
It is, for sure. And I think we need both. But I think it's been perhaps sometimes a bit too strongly biased toward basic research, and to actually have this kind of complement of having also engineering driven research, I think is a nice.
Okay, but that's the segue. That's the segue to my second question. Actually, question to you, Anders, and now we should move on. But I propose to you, Anders, and this is learning from the podcast, learning from you, that when we are dealing in the space of AI, a lot of the stuff we do is very much, in a sense, you could almost put it in the category of engineering more than research in relation to figuring out how should a neural network work with 11 or 20 layers. Yeah. So we're getting to some very practical, experienced approaches where I can hear you on the AI after work, that if you want to go from the 10 layers to 20 layers, you need to do the short max like this, and you minimax. I don't fucking know what I'm talking about, but you know what I mean. It's like it's very technical, practical,
and the boundary between engineering problems and research problems, I think, is increasingly blurred. And this kind of scaling,
especially,
laws,
is my argument.
And the scaling laws, that you see here, is the extreme, scale of large language model a research value or an engineering value? I think a lot of researchers would argue that scaling data sizes and models is simply an engineering problem, and that is the only thing. I don't think that's true, really, and some of that work to be able to scale to these extreme scales that we have requires a lot of research to make that work.
But without naming names, I think you're stepping right into a core interesting topic here. And you said it before, the fundamental research or model behind ChatGPT or even Transformers, someone would argue, is built on knowledge or breakthroughs that are earlier.
Yes.
But then to get to the fundamental scale that we're doing today has made some major breakthroughs. Now, the scaling problem had to be solved. So there's been some major research in relation to the scaling of large models. But if you're a little bit, if you put your nose up, you're like, that's not research, that's engineering, Anders.
Yes.
Do you see what I mean, right? So we are talking about here what we have experienced this year. Is that a feat of research or is it a feat of engineering? The last evolution that we see now in media hype.
And I think it's really hard to answer, but I think it's more valuable to ask the question, what should you praise the most? Right?
I can't answer that either, by the way.
But if you said the good example of the internet, of course they made up the internet protocol in the 70s and had
is that the breakthrough?
Exactly.
Is that the breakthrough, or is the web browser the breakthrough that is the real innovation?
It's when you make something work. It's when you move something to some kind of mainstream that make it change society.
But
right?
We can have a huge argument with the research community on this particular topic. When was the breakthrough of internet, or when was the break? Is Transformer a bigger breakthrough than?
Yes,
exactly. Than LDSMs or
LSTMs? Yes,
LSTMs. Sorry.
Yeah,
let's not go there. But
it's a good question.
I think by going into the internet example, we sort of de-weaponize the argument.
Exactly.
Is the breakthrough in the 70s, or is there innovation and breakthrough in the 90s?
Yeah.
If you look at the hardcore quanta to understand the TCP/IP protocol, and to how we did that's in the 70s, right?
I think Sir Tim Berners-Lee, that invented the web, had made a bigger impact on actually creating the internet than what they did with the DARPA net and ARPA protocols that they created. But I'm not sure
someone would argue against you for sure.
Yes.
But it's interesting, right? It's the scarcity of something, or when you do the breakthrough that brings abundance. That's
putting together things properly and actually finding the solution that makes it work. I think that's really impressive, and that should be praised.
It should be praised equally, at least.
Yes.
But is that the segue to what's next?
Yeah, maybe.
I think it's a good segue. So in any case, I think it was a fantastic season. 35 episodes this year. This is the number 85. So that means that we are starting with a season 6, which will bring us to a number 100 somewhere end of May, which I'm going to be super proud of.
Yeah, we have to celebrate that properly.
Yes, we will definitely.
Yeah.
Yes, that was my first number when we started with this. I said like, okay, we're going to push.
Yeah, I'm
this
going to put it on
100.
air now. Katrina, my sambo, asking me, "What's your goal with the episode?
The goal.
Are you going to do this forever?"
Yes,
So let's talk about this.
Until we walk this earth, then we do it.
No, but could we put, maybe it's stupid, but what's the goal with the episode? And why do we do it? And why do we move forward with it?
For me, it's simply to have fun. And I actually learned a lot as well during these episodes and broadened my view quite a lot from the technical depth of, whatever kind of models that you use to a more broader understanding of creating value.
Yeah, so our humble, small ambitions is about having fun, learning, networking. And then maybe to do a small...
I have another one as well.
Okay.
Because I think that how we started this is that we wanted to demystify what AI is by presenting people that are actually working with AI, but in the same time bringing guests that do not have anything to do with AI.
But is affected with it.
And they're going to be affected by it. By doing so, we are also making a time capsule of the people that potentially are shaping how we're going to live our lives in 10 years, 15 years from now, and how our kids are going to experience this.
No, but explain the time capsule bit, because we always tell the guests this, but I never figured it out.
So
what do you mean with the time capsule?
Time capsule is that we are creating content that will live beyond no matter what episode we actually do. And although it seems trivial in many aspects, that, for many people, what we are doing is just basically going to work and you talk about data and AI and all these other things. But the products that we are developing and how we are shaping the organizations right now will affect how we consume products in the future, or how we live our lives as well. So if we are talking about
what
AI
if,
in politics,
what if tomorrow and for our children?
Yes, exactly. I mean, look at the generative AI is already embedded in the way how we are living, and it probably is going to be even more immersed in the future. And some of the people that has been on this podcast are actually having a genuine impact in the shaping of that future.
Yeah,
that is the time capsule, right? 10 years from now, or 15 years, or 30 years from now, when somebody is going to see the AI canvas that we have here that nobody has seen before, that will, in some of that signatures, you will recognize some of the people that had a pivotal and incremental impact to society and products before.
That's
and
nice.
Just learning these people and having them here with us every Thursday, for me, is just a blessing. And I usually say I walk amongst giants, and I'm very thankful for starting this. And that is, I will continue until we can.
I certainly agree. It's surprising how much, it was a surprise to me. I certainly started off in just, it sounds like a fun idea, let's go with it. But I was a bit surprised how much you actually learn on the other side of the table when doing this. So.
Yeah, and it is very hard to convey. When you are immersed in deep discussions, like I think that's also the format we have chosen, which is like a long format. Egotistically for us, it's amazing, right? Because how many times do you get to deep interview? Like if I was trying to start a company and I wanted to interview and understand the best brains on AI to suck out the essence of this, I couldn't do it with 20 minutes interviews, right? You would do deep interviews, and we don't even have deep interviews. We have deep conversations, and I find that a blessing in many ways.
Certainly agree. Should we move very quickly? I think we also, if we should also have some time to plan the next or season or something, we need to move. a bit more.
It's Sweden, so that means the kitchen in the restaurants will close around 10:30. So
Okay.
Oh, we haven't had dinner
the
yet.
dinner
That's
is
why.
going to be very cool. Yeah, but let's talk about next season, maybe.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or what's the trends? What do we predict, and what do we want as guests? Something like this.
Yes. And I think it would be fun to start to explore a bit some different type of formats as well. And one of them that we've been speaking about is to have more of the theme-based focus. So when something big breaks, like the JEPA paper that we had before, having 2 or 3 people combined with us, having a panel discussion more or less about what that paper really meant, and having really focused, not on a person, which is interesting as well, but still trying to have a bit more topic-oriented kind of panel discussions.
So one evolution is to have theme-based.
Yes.
It is to maybe have a panel, or maybe 1 or 2 people. It doesn't need to be a panel, but where the theme is the center.
So yeah, so focus
I like
on
that.
the team.
So as a way to mix it up, like that. Now, before we move into sort of the practicalities and vision for the pod, are we predicting any core topics that will be super interesting to cover next year? Can we extrapolate on where we are right now?
I can do several.
Do several then,
Okay,
please.
because
please.
we just finished. I have been now talking for some time with you guys and your. So we are writing a piece that is basically about potential enterprise AI winter in Europe, which of course the answer to it is it's not going to happen. However, there is a very, and just so we go through is what AI winter and AI summer is. So AI winter is basically when you see decline in interest and investments in AI. And that has happened a couple of times since the 50s in the research. But enterprise AI has just basically entered the field. But before that, AI summer is when you see incline of investment and interest in AI, right? And then enterprise AI is actually deployment of AI within an enterprise or a company or a business, right? Which is basically very new, as we never came to that point before. So now, the article that we are writing, although a little bit nihilistic and negative towards that, negative. It's there are things that are happening right now which I don't think that are very positive in Europe, right? Not very positive, but actually it's a wrong way. It's let's call them things that might slow down the investment interest in AI. Why? Because what we see on the market right now, there is a very big struggle to find value out of AI within the enterprise. And why this is this? The case of that is that you have like quite a lot of inflation of ambitions, but it's and the cost of AI is increasing dramatically. And imagine how much it's gonna cost if you have like a multiple thousands of models into production. And that is not a cost if you can prove the value out of the investments, because then that becomes an investment. It's not a cost anymore. But what if you can't, or you only have proven a very, very small part of it? Then we will see a decrease in capabilities, which is already obvious right now. There is a lot of restructuring in enterprises going on. There is still a lot of challenges with data. Talent is moving, and we don't have enough talent. And then on top of that, we have also regulations coming up. And one of the biggest topics that we probably will going to discuss is the AI Act. So for me, the biggest 2 things that we want to, I think that we will be discussing next year is value realization, decentralized value realization, productionalization, as you say it. And then the second thing is how much these regulations that are coming in Europe are going to impact the maturity of that we have accomplished until now. There was one thing that I was speaking with a contact, I think it was only a few days ago, and he mentioned something that was very interesting. If the AI Act comes in place, is going to take as much years to implement that as the time that has been needed to implement AI in the organization until now, which is super interesting. And regulation is always good, but you know what people are going to do when regulation is going to come? The management is just going to say like how big risk this is, and then start cutting things that are they're going to see as a potential risk. So all of these challenges with data, challenges with value realization, lack of talent, increased AI divide, dependability of different systems, and etc. And regulation potentially can turn into a slowdown of AI investments in the enterprise. But
I'd like to add one more
Yes.
thing that can actually add to the AI winter in enterprise, and that is the media hype that we're seeing about the tech giants, insane advancements like ChatGPT. Everyone is going to expect now that when you start to have an AI product, you're going to have the same type of high quality products that they are having. And that's not going to happen. So then when they see, what they are trying to do, and they get time and time again getting, the expectation crushed, that's potentially going to contribute to an AI winter in that way. So yes, I'd just like to add that.
yes, so AI winter probably will never happen because the AI is already embedded in every organization and the way how we innovate with data and AI. So that is basically one that is the difference from the previous AI winters. The first thing, the technology is mature, we have enough data, and it's already omnipresent everywhere, right? So that means that there is no coming back. However,
and we know we can see in some companies that do find extreme value from, so we know it can be done.
Exactly, which means that basically instead of AI winter, it's going to be AI slowdown and potential maximization of the AI gap between one company to another. Keep in mind that such things are so big that can actually also have geopolitical effects and conflicts between societies.
But Anders, what is your? Do you want to make any predictions for next year?
I think this is a good one, and we need to understand, the limitations and really how do you find value in society and for SMEs and not only tech giants. I think that's a question that we need to think more about. But I'd like to, if we just take, I'm sorry to spin on the media hype here, but the ramifications of ChatGPT and what the upcoming GPT-4 that everyone is, thinking about, what could that be? I think it's, even though I'm spinning on the hype now, I think still it's kind of fun to just ponder about and what that's going to do.
You think it's going to be more online or taking into the results of
just
searches?
think about all the things that OpenAI have
Prompts?
done. One, of course, is GPT-3 that they had, and 2 and 1 in the beginning. They had Whisper, which actually tried to take audio and move that into text in an extreme way, in a multimodal, multitask, multilingual way. It's insane improvement in just working with audio in a great way. They had DALL-E that made text connected to images, so making it work for images as well in an amazing way. They had, of course, ChatGPT that move it into a dialogue settings where you can have an interactive potential interaction with a system in a new way than never possible before. They had something called, what was the name of it? Web GPT, which was also adding the ability to use search engines to query the web while using the model to find new data while you're working with it. If you just combine all of this together, it's kind of, if you just put those things together, it's easy to imagine. And I forgot one thing. Of course, also the code generation part that ChatGPT can do is insane. So you have, text generation, you have audio understanding, you have image understanding, you have dialogue, interactive mode, you have code generation, building, the functionality of it. You have the retrieval possibility from the whole web online. This is moving into these kind of online thinkings. If you imagine they're building a system that combines all these parts, you will potentially have a system where you can interactively say, please add this functionality to the system. you speak in natural language and it says, please add a functionality of understanding what the brain tumor looks like. And it generates some code. It can understand, okay, images, I can understand those. We have the DALL-E, etc. You can easily have the perception moving from that. And then you have a system that you, for one, can interact with in how to build a system. But then when you use it, you also have an interactive part of it. So the code part will be interactive in how you build the system. But then when you use it, you will also have an interactive part. It will be retrieving stuff from the internet and not being static parameters as it is today from 2021 or 2020, as you said, but it will actually have data available from today all the time.
Exactly. And that is when things are going to start happening.
It's going to be insanely powerful.
Yes. I don't see any purpose using Google when that happens.
But Google can do this as well. Google also have, they have the Lambda thing. They have basically everything that OpenAI is doing. They have similar versions of everything there. So and I think Google potentially is better in productionizing things than OpenAI is. They made a really impressive ChatGPT productionization of it, building a service that was surprisingly efficient and could scale to millions of users. But there is no one else that I would argue that can productionize things and products like Google can. So I would certainly not count out Google in this sense.
By the way, do you remember Iron Man and Jarvis? Yeah. Right? Just a rather very intelligent system. There you go. You ask a question, design me this, and that is the thing.
But then if you take one more order of abstraction on this, for one, you have humans interacting with the system to build it. Yeah. And you have humans interacting with the system to use it, okay? What happens if the AI system interacts with itself?
Now you're going philosophical on us.
Yes. But it's not an impossible thought to have.
So we have been having this singularity discussion with a lot of guests.
This is singularity.
And it's 100 years away, it's 50 years away, and all of a sudden, oops, a slip up, a ChatGPT gone rogue, and we are very close to, what Anders did, you're adding a lot of components together, and we try to build that system, and all of a sudden,
the system has the ability to self-correct.
The system is self-correcting, and we started by doing it online. We started to fixing it ourselves, and at some point, it's self-correcting. What is the difference between self-correcting and self-aware, and where is this leading? All of a sudden, 20, 30, 50, 100 years earlier than anyone thought.
I think Ray Kurzweil is not that far off.
2029.
Yeah.
But okay, now I'm going to put another spin on this.
No, I think you need to answer the question, your predictions for next year, and I think we should stop there.
I stop with my predictions.
We are on 240.
Oh, Jesus Christ.
Jesus Christ. Okay, 240, my predictions framed as a question. This is the art of possibility that we've been talking about for the last couple of minutes. When are the organizations ready? So my argument...
Enterprises, you mean?
Enterprises, business, society. If you want to close the AI divide, we want the large analog enterprises and the sort of mid-tier enterprises to start embracing this. When are they ready? Is 2023 going to be the year when they are moving to really thinking about this? Because if I'm a little bit brutal here, the problem we are having in not the 10 tech giants, but the rest of the world, to speak bluntly, is that we are living by a pattern and paradigms which are relevant for the industrial society. It was relevant from the 1800s and 1800s, and it was relevant when we got over time. If I take companies I work with like Vattenfall, it was 100 years ago they were pioneers. They've been in a mature efficiency chasing stage in the game they know for many, many years. And now they need to be pioneers, innovators, productizers, again, in a new macro era, a new society.
So what are your thoughts? When do you think this is going to happen?
No, so I don't know. I think coincidentally today, or just not today, but in the next couple of days, an author called Steve Denning. Steve Denning is one of those guys who writes in Forbes, and he writes on the death of capitalism. He writes. And his argument is literally that we can't fix current management. We need to resurrect it, reimagine it in relation of all the things we talked about: agile, product, data, AI, and he makes a very interesting point. If you go all the way back to Adam Smith, the forefather of modern economics, 1800s, late 1800s, Adam Smith talked about value of exchange and value of use. And he talked about the fundamental evil of, or selfishness, not evil, but selfishness of businessmen. And he looked at the market as sort of the market and capitalism in the modern world as the sort of the way that market works. And the core argument that was put forward and Friedman and others highlighted was that the core purpose of a corporate, of an organization, of a corporate, is to realize shareholder value. And now let me finish this spiel. Peter Drucker, as another management researcher, posted in the 60s, a complete opposite view. It's not about shareholder value. The core only purpose of any company is to create value for the users. But if you start thinking and start dissecting of the patterns, the organizational governance, how we're organized, you get to one dimension where you really focus on value, and then you can discuss what value is, if it's only financial value of something else, or you can get more sort of the more capitalist shareholder value view.
This is a very, very, I think that we should.
No.
So why
long
do you deliver
long spiel back to it. In order to create value and sustainably capitalize on AI, you need another management paradigm. Is my fundamental. I think there are some fundamental changes in how we organize. Now, are we ready for that in 2023?
No, we are not.
So, in 2023 will then look exactly like 2022 with more
As long as we run organization in the way that we have been doing for the past 200 years, it will never change. We need new leadership. They need to be data literate. They need to understand the possibility and the potential of AI. And until that happens and they stop with the political things, it's never going to happen.
But think carefully now.
No, but because you mentioned one thing that was very important. So you mentioned that the only value of an enterprise is actually keeping up with the shareholder
value. That's the old dogma.
And then the new dogma is that needs to portray value to the customer. Now the question is, why do you need to portray the value of a customer?
Now, the whole idea is very simple.
So what is the gain of you maintaining the value of the customer?
The whole
stay in the game.
The whole dimension is the difference between value in use, value in exchange. Adam Smith highlights value in exchange, which drives transactions, the goods logic, and drives markets. But with data and AI, there is no value until we use it. So the whole era we're going into is all about value in use. Exactly. So here now it's a fundamentally different mindset that basically flirts with the other dimension of what Adam Smith wrote about value in use. And here I think is the core topic then. If you want to talk about value in use, you can't talk about value change, processes, and output, you need to talk about output. A product has an outcome that we want to have. It has. We don't consume a product for the output sake. We want something from it that's an outcome. We want impact in what we're doing, and then that's flipping the focus of what we are managing towards. Are we managing towards outputs and efficiency, or are we managing towards effectiveness, towards outcomes?
Or both.
Outputs is just a lower version of outcomes.
Or both.
No, so output is process oriented, outcome is product oriented, impact is why we use products.
Perhaps it will become, what Elon Musk and others are saying, that in 10 years plus, past the singularity, we will live in the world of abundance.
Yeah.
Meaning that you don't have a motivation for value of shareholders, of exchange or outputs. The value will be more morality driven, perhaps value of society.
Different view of value completely.
But that our pension system is based on the old ways.
No, but
you don't need the pension system anymore in that time.
Because
how it will turn, you cannot flip the what we have been doing for 500 years like this.
Yes, I can.
Okay,
yes,
let's take this to the after work.
Yes.
But, so I want to thank both of you for being fantastic hosts this season. It's been a fantastic year. I think we met like a lot of amazing people, and I look forward to actually push the limits next year. I'm a little bit more energized towards the senior level to get them on board and see actually what we can do with it. Yeah.
I'm gonna thank you, Goran, as well for all the amazing work you have done in organizing all of these things.
No, it's not about thanking it's not about thanking. I think that what we need to thank is the guests.
Yeah.
The main shout out goes to the guests, of course.
Yes.
And we are hoping for
having fun.
And we're having fun.
One more year.
And we're gonna have what I want to see. I want to see themes. I think that's a brilliant idea, Anders. And I want to see a variety of guests that takes us into new listeners.
Yes.
In the sense that broadening the footprint of where AI has impact. I really want to see that.
And I'm still waiting for a lot of technical, deep discussions.
Yeah, well, we'll have those.
Less of those.
And I'm looking for what is called a new little bit of formats where we can break as well from this long format and just focus on a little bit of more games and things like that, because Bob
like
Sturman,
today we try to do an hour and we do 240.
No, I think that the last episode with Bob Sturman and Rujin Huyang was really nice, because we had on-site guests, and then we had like a music and everything else, and it was beautiful. So that's why
it's moving hybrid as well.
Yes, I would like to thank you for this year and end the season with the season with what actually has been prevailing as a trend this year, and that is generative AI. And in this case, we will end the season with a song that was presented last week by Bob Sturm, and it was his AI song contest song for 2021. So this will be the last song, and see you on 19th of January 2021.
Merry Christmas and
Merry
Happy
Christmas,
New Year.
everyone. Merry Christmas, everyone.
När vi vände hemåt gick allting så fort. Där vid vägens kant var den sista gången vi sågs. Vad ska vi nu göra? Vår värld är i sig lik. Vårt barn, vår ängel borta är. Vi minns dig så som igår. Hon var bara 6 månader gammal, lilla tjej, när vi kära vän, evigt förlorad. Utan en chans, för den bilen bara kör. Och vi får aldrig veta vad hon skulle blivit. Vad ska vi nu göra? Vår värld är i sig lik. Vårt barn, vår ängel borta här. Vi minns dig så som igår. Hon var bara 6 månader gammal, lilla tjej. När en galning ryckte bort vår kära vän, evigt förlorad. Hon älskar